If you're still filling out the forms because you want to speak, you can still fill those out. You can hand them to one of the people on the ends, and they'll pass them down. No problem with that. But otherwise, I will call to order the Planning Commission meeting on July 20th at 6:33. And the first up is the approval of minutes from June 15th. Any changes?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
All right, seconded by Emily. All in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right, that is approved. Public appearances for non-agenda items. I think everyone wants to speak on an agenda item. I don't see anything that's not on the agenda. So next is agenda review. Scott, did you want, or not Scott, sorry. Zach, do you want to make a?
Yeah, can I move to have 5K moved to the front?
All right, is there a second to move 5K to the first item on the agenda? Second by Randy. And all in favor of moving that up, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay? All right. So we will move that one up, and a lot of people are here for K. And so, is there anything else on the agenda review, Lisa, we need? All right. Then we'll get right to it. I know there's a Bucks game later. So, next up then will be, first up, I guess I should say, is the pre-app PDD for lots 53 and 54 on Chapel Valley. And I'm not sure if the applicant is here. If you want to come up and speak, that would be great.
Do we start?
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. Yeah, it's. You just want to tell us what you guys are planning, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Mike Samuels, and I'm here on behalf of Andev Group, which is a real estate development company. Oh, sure. I'm here this evening on behalf of Andev Group, real estate development company, with regard to our petition for rezoning, PDD zoning, for lots 53 and 54, adjacent to the McKee Farms Park. We have plans to construct two senior assisted living buildings. On the north parcel would be a 72-unit assisted living building, and on the south parcel would be a 36-unit memory care facility. We have, Lisa, do you have that presentation? What I'd like to briefly do is just introduce everybody to the company. And we have a PDF presentation. What we have for you are just samples of other facilities of similar natures that we have built with Ganther Construction, who will be our contractor for this project, assuming that we receive permission to build it. So that first building is, the one from the opening slide is in Highland Park, Illinois, and is a 3-story assisted living and memory care building. That building that you're looking at there is in Morton Grove, Illinois, and also a assisted living, that's 4 stories of assisted living and memory care. The next slide.
If you can try and keep speaking into the mic.
I'm
I know it's
sorry.
hard.
I'm
I know
sorry,
it's
yeah.
hard with the screen on one side and the mic on the other.
Sure. This next slide is the Waukesha facility that we built several years ago. Also, memory care and assisted living exclusively. I think there's also a hospice in that facility. And I don't know how well everybody can see it. The next building is another facility that we built in Menominee Falls of the same nature and character. And I think the last one is, that's the Highland Park, Illinois. That's Yeah, the one that was on the front cover, that's a little bit fuller composite of photos. And I don't know if you can see the interiors very well on these, but as you can see, you know, the exteriors are all prime materials, heavily landscaped, and you know, we try to incorporate our buildings as much into the neighborhoods as we possibly can. We also have tonight Tom Ostrom to tell you a little bit about his company, which is the operating company for the services that we provide in the buildings. And so at this point, I'd like to ask Tom to come and just give you a little bit of history of his company and his business, his facilities.
Hello, is this good? My name's Tom Ostrom. I'm president of a company called Encore Management and Development. We are a senior housing operator. We operate 33 assisted living buildings in the state of Wisconsin. We're headquartered out of Chicago. We also have some buildings in Minnesota. We don't have anything in Illinois, though. We're a part of this project. We would operate the building. Building is fairly typical for us. It is a CBRF licensed assisted living building, 2 separate buildings. One is a smaller one-story building that is focused on providing services to residents that have memory care issues like Alzheimer's, and a second 2-story building, also CBRF licensed, but designed for residents who need care but not related. Usually it's a physical ailment, not related to memory loss. We've done similar projects throughout the state. We have some buildings nearby, Sun Prairie, Middleton, 2 buildings in DeForest. We also have buildings near Green Bay, near Milwaukee. I think that we have a good reputation in the industry. Currently there are only 2 CBRF licensed buildings in the city of Fitchburg. We would like to add one, because I think that there is a need for both Fitchburg residents and the parents of Fitchburg residents.
Thanks, Tom. We have received the staff comments and et cetera with regard to our initial filing, and we'll be happy to answer any questions regarding those when the staff makes its presentation. With regard to the issues like the loading zone and traffic and parking, et cetera, we won't address those now. We do intend to have a second neighborhood meeting, but we were not able to schedule it before tonight. So we will be scheduling a second neighborhood meeting, and if there are neighbors here who are here regarding this matter, if they have a preference as to whether that meeting be by Zoom or by in person, we'll defer to their preference. So with that, I think that's all we have directly for you, and then we will be here to answer all our questions. We have our principal, we have our architect, we have our operator, and we have our civil engineer here. If there are any questions in any of those regards, we'll be happy to respond.
All right, we'll have staff report and then I know some comments from the citizens. So we'll do that part first, then we'll go back into discussion and questions at that point.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So just give a kind of brief staff report. So this is a pre-application meeting for the use of PDD zoning. And the applicant is proposing PDD zoning for a 2-story 72-unit assisted living facility and a 1-story 36-unit memory care facility on lots 53 and 54 of Chapel Valley. The proposed use would comply with the high-density residential land use category. And the purpose of the pre-application meeting is to determine whether PDD zoning is appropriate. And the applicant provided some justification for PDD zoning in their application. However, per the staff memo, we have requested that they provide some updates to the justification for accuracy in any kind of future submittals. However, staff didn't identify any concerns. We just want to have the materials updated. Then the site needs to, a couple of main staff concerns at this stage is that the site currently does not provide any on-site stormwater management. There was some belief earlier on that the stormwater could be handled in existing facilities off-site, but we have confirmed that that's not the case. So, we'd be interested to get a better understanding of how providing stormwater facilities might impact the site planning. And then stormwater facilities, for example, could be provided underground, above ground, things like that. So those are kind of the main points. Looking at the site plan a little closer, just for everyone following along at home, you can see the northern parcel would be the 2-story 70-unit assisted living with the 1-story 36-unit memory care. Public Works, currently there's an outlot between the two, which provides stormwater, and it also does provide walkway access just on a grass path that's not paved or anything, but residents in the neighborhood do currently use that. They don't show it on the site plan, but the applicant would be required to extend this path connection along the southern edge of the development to connect to the existing path here. I think that's all we have for now. We can take a look at some of the architectural details. So here you can see the 2-story facility. Per the applicant, they're utilizing a kind of prairie-style architecture with the hipped roofs and their building materials. You can see here just another kind of rendering, and perhaps the applicant could provide some more details as well on the architectural building materials and how it is in line with some of the existing developments in the neighborhood. I think that's all for the staff memo.
All right. Excuse me, one question before we go to public comments. I know that you mentioned the staff report and the written one that there are some changes from what was originally proposed and what the original neighborhood meeting was about. Can you elaborate more on those changes?
Sure, perhaps, I was not in attendance at the neighborhood meeting, so perhaps the applicant can kind of summarize how the application has changed since that meeting.
Sure.
Do you want, maybe we should have Ken, the architect, step up for that?
Sure.
Ken?
You can take, any of the microphones work.
I think the biggest changes were originally, one of the buildings was considered an RCAC, a residential care apartment complex. So a bit more independent type of assisted living, and then there was a combined memory care assisted living CBR facility. And I believe at the time they were both 2-story buildings. So we have since gone away from the apartment type setting and more to fully assisted living care with a separate memory care building. And
That's 1-story.
that's once the memory care building is 1-story, so that was reduced. So that would impact, less traffic and as well as less height, obviously, in the building. So that's really the primary change on the site.
Okay. Thank you. So I'm going to go to citizen comments. If people, I guess we have an open mic over here. Let's see, I've got, I think Ken Kazakowski.
That was
right?
me.
Okay, all right,
For any questions.
good. Ed and Sandy Waldorf, if you'd like to come up over here and speak, that would be great. Yeah, that'd be great. Before we get started, I just kind of want to remind members of the community that we do ask the residents to speak in 3 minutes or less, and so it's just something we have in council and most of our meetings as well.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
The first thing on my list is that it's a wet lowland. It was about 4 or 5 years ago, we had a heavy rain, and across the park where they want to build, it was flooded. We had a sump pump, and it ran day and night. It went off 30 or 40 seconds, day and night, to keep up. And right next to us, to the north of us, is another condo. And there's a low area there, a little low. And it hasn't rained a whole lot yet this year, but it did one time this year, and it was so wet they can't mow. And like I said, it's a low area. Let's see. Wilshire Drive is a very narrow street. And the parking is a concern because it is a narrow street. And I took all these pictures last night. They had a band or another musical concert. And I took a picture of going into the park and on all the different streets. You probably can't see it up there, but Brennan Avenue, right here is where you go into the park, and the street was completely full. Right here is Chapel Valley, where they have senior, well, it's rent for anybody that wants to rent it, but it's more senior citizen. This right here is the West Chapel Valley Road. Going past Chapel Valley is quality living for seniors. There's 2 buildings. It has 110 units. So that's more than ample. Wilshire Drive, right across the street, is narrow. And as you can see, there's cars last night. It's actually about room for 1 car to go by. And this is Wilshire Drive. Right across the street is where we live, all of the condos. Right across the street is where they're proposing to build this. This is down Wilshire Drive, looking north just about half a block from us, and Sullivan's Crossing is there. It has 2 memory care facilities, 39 units. This right here, and you can look at this after you have time, is Rembrandt Way. That's where we live. There's a driveway to that. And this is the Wilshire Drive. Right across the street, it's like I said, where we are, it's a low area. And it's a heavily traveled street. The purpose of these pictures is to show it's a very narrow street, and that's a concern. There is 110 units of senior living.
Sir, I'm sorry that I have to.
My time's up.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I hate having to do that.
Can I come
I'm
back in a
sorry.
little bit?
I'm sorry. We can't do that. I'm really sorry. There are some more people that will speak. Hopefully, they'll hit on
You
some
want
of
me to
those
leave this
same.
here so you can look at it later?
Yeah, that'd be great. And if you want to even pass it, people up here to look at it a little closer, that'd be great. I'm sorry. I've got Richard Fries next to speak.
We'll make sure to talk to you in the neighbor meeting. We will make sure to talk to you.
Thank you. I have 3 things I'd like to talk about. The first is within 1 mile of our community, we've got the highest number of senior facilities in Dane County. And so I find it very difficult to understand why we need more. Second thing, I'd like to reiterate on the traffic. I mean, last night was ridiculous. It was really tough to drive down the street, Chapel Valley and Wilshire, coming back from the park. And I was just thinking, if we had the facility with all those units and emergency vehicles had to get through, it would have been very, very difficult. And my third topic is water. I know when we have heavy rains, the ponds in the park fill up. In fact, was it last year or the year before, it overflowed. They had dead fish on the walk paths there. And I'm concerned, where's the water going to go if they put in parking lots and buildings there?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I've got Jane Larson next.
I'm Jane Larson. I live right across the street on Wilshire, directly where this building will face my building as it is. And I agree with all of the people that have spoke so far. We've had an issue with water. They've regraded our land. It still is a problem, even though we haven't had much water lately. That is a big concern of mine. I moved there with the idea that the most that they would put in there would be other buildings such as ours, maybe a duplex or other residential housing. And so, at the time, I purchased this place thinking that was the case, and now I'm told that this is going to be more rezoned. And so I'm concerned about my property values, my taxes. I feel like the citizens of Fitchburg should have a say over what is in our neighborhood. We do have several facilities already down the street, and we're all seniors. It's not like we're not, we don't appreciate that. It's just that, there's not a lot of space there, and there's a lot of traffic, a lot of people. The community has several events there throughout the summer. Now, last year was COVID, so we didn't have a lot of that, but there's 5K runs, there's parties that are planned at the park, there's music festivals, there's carnivals, there's different things that are always going on, and it makes our community richer because of that, I believe, and I think there's a lot of families that use the park, there's runners, there's bikers all the time down that street. So I'm concerned for, the welfare of more than just our neighborhood. So that's, my concern is, like I said, the property values. If I sell and then I'm in a community where I'm surrounded by senior buildings, I don't know who's going to want to live there with a younger family or whatever. So, I guess that's my biggest concern is the traffic and how right now, when we have events, or such as the seniors are down the street, we have the fire trucks come in, the ambulance come in several times throughout the night. We're talking about 40 employees a day that come and go, delivery people, and then on top of that, more ambulance and fire department and police. I mean, I just feel like we've already maxed out what we can accommodate there. Maybe just some residential housing would be about the most that I could see worth having there, but those are my concerns for now, and I'd like to hear more in the future and be part of this, trying to come up with an idea for us. But, I feel like as a taxpayer, I should have a right to say what goes there. So, anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Scott, I believe there's a couple people online that want to speak. Is that correct? All right, I'll start. David, maybe? Would you like to speak?
I think he's a member of the applicant team.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you're part of the applicant team, so I don't know if you have anything.
I'm sorry, did you say David Glazer?
Yeah, did you have anything you wanted to add, David?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No, I answered no on the registration. I'm sorry if there was some confusion.
No problem. All right.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
And then Paul, I believe, is also Paul Phillips. All right, Paul, would you like to speak?
Paul is with JSD, who is our
Oh.
engineers, and Jessica is here from her office. So I think Paul is just following what.
Oh, okay, just in case it's anything you, okay. Catherine, would you like to speak? And maybe not part of the team here.
Hi there, everybody. I did submit a number of concerns to Julia and Gabriella, and so I don't know if those were already brought to your attention. One was traffic, and the other thing is I'm concerned, on days when we have garbage pickup and mail delivery, if there are people parking in the limited areas where mailboxes and garbage goes, how are those trucks going to get in and out down Wilshire? Number one. And I don't like all the parking right on the street. So I don't know why they can't, if they're going to put these big buildings there, why they can't hide the parking between the berm and the building and bring the patios out more in the front. So a lot of the residents that are mobile in the other two assisted livings come out and sit on our street all the time on their walkers. They watch people go up and down. they've got a patio in the back, but that's not where the residents want to sit. They sit out on our streets in their walkers, wheelchairs. So we see that frequently. And they, so I would encourage you to think about swapping parking to the back so that, one, our residents aren't looking at a parking lot day in, day out. Even if you put shrubs there, I mean, that's a massive amount of parking. And I'm on Rembrandt, I'm facing already a parking lot, but because of the nature of those facilities and the underground parking for residents, there's not that much parking. It's the UPS man, whatever, going in and out of the McKee senior apartments there. And the back parking lot is well off the road. So there's a lot of green space there with the driveway to the back. And this is gonna be right on the street. I don't know how much, when you see the easement line there and the parking lot starts right there, that's less than, what, 3 feet, 6 feet, maybe? I don't know how much that is, but it's not much between there and the sidewalk, which when I look at all of your other facilities, you have much bigger land areas for the size of the building. And this is shoehorned in here on a very narrow lot. And I think it's going to not be very attractive or homey. It's going to look like a warehouse for old people, personally. So that's all I have to say.
All right, thank you. Perfect, 3 minutes. All right, I have some people that have comments that I'll read now, but I don't think anyone else wants to speak, but I should confirm that maybe at this point. I don't see anyone else who wants to speak, but I do have some comments to read. Some other people have registered. I think Jerry O'Day registered, but he hasn't said if it's in support or in opposition. I think it's this agenda item, I'm not sure. I have Mary June Fries registering in opposition. I think it's Audrey Polinchek registering in opposition. I have Dawn Grell from Fitchburg registering in opposition with some comments. As a healthcare advocate who is familiar with resources and assisted living facilities in the greater Madison area, a Chapel Valley neighborhood resident, I have the following concerns, questions related to this proposal. 1, staff retention is an ongoing issue for many assisted living facilities. What leads you to believe it would be any different in this instance? Number 2, currently many facilities are below capacity and are experiencing huge staffing shortages, including Sylvan Crossings, the facility directly across the street from the proposed location. What would set you apart from all others in hiring and retaining qualified individuals? Number 3, will owners, managers be on-site or local and accessible when issues arise for residents, staff, and concerned neighbors? Number 4, what did you use to determine there was a need in this community for a CBRF? Number 5, will state funding be an acceptable mode of payment? How can you qualify a rate of $4,000 a month when the average is closer to $5,500 to $6,000 per month? 6, what led you to the statement that visitation or traffic would be light with 40 staff members and 100 plus residents? Seems that would be very hard to predict. I've had experience with many seniors who reside in assisted living facilities. There are very few who are able to provide the care, attention, consistent, and trained staff and quality of life that our loved ones deserve. I appreciate your consideration of these concerns. I also have Daryl Fleming, who says, I will not be able to attend the meeting to register my opposition to changing to the zoning on lots 53 and 54. I ask you to keep present zoning. Thank you. This is from Melissa Miller. I'm reaching out as a concerned citizen and advocate. I understand there's a meeting tonight to discuss a 72-bed assisted living and 36-bed memory care that is being considered for the Fitchburg area on Chapel Valley Road and Wilshire Drive. I sincerely hope to make it to this meeting, but in case I do not, I want to take the time to address my concerns with this development. I received the email below today. Also, I have that area currently being saturated. I feel the need to advocate for the existing communities in that area and the elderly population. Wisconsin is currently facing a 23,000 caregiver shortage, according to WALA. Healthcare right now is hurting significantly, with no end in sight and a solution that we are all struggling to find. It would be irresponsible and unfair to build any more senior housing communities until we can make sure those we are placing in them can be cared for like they deserve. I'm contesting this application. We simply do not have the bandwidth to add any more senior housing until we can ensure folks are being cared for. Please join me in finding a solution to address the current problem, not continue to add to it. This is from Kathy Talat. I want to voice my opposition to the revised development plan for the lots on Wilshire Road. I'm opposed to the new plan, including the addition of a 2-story building with only surface parking. I'm also opposed to the revised plan that does away with an upscale senior apartment building and now includes just assisted living and memory care. As a resident of Remington Park duplex condo units, I have concerns regarding a residential neighborhood now being surrounded by assisted living businesses. Let's face it, they are indeed businesses. We'll be losing the feel of a residential neighborhood extending from Remington Park to their homes on Wilshire Road. I'm concerned about property values in our neighborhood decreasing with the addition of more assisted living and memory care units in the neighborhood. The increased emergency vehicle traffic this will bring cannot be supported by the current traffic and parking patterns on Chapel Valley Road. I urge Planning Commission to deny the rezoning request for this development. I've got one more from Roger Schultz. We had planned on attending the meeting, but due to emergency, we cannot. We'd like to be on record as being strongly opposed to this zoning change. When we were looking into building here, our realtor informed us that the lots across the street were not part of the park. He also informed us that what they were zoned and said when something gets built there will most likely be condos like ours or like the ones on the other side of the park. We were comfortable with that. Later we learned the city had actually gone to court to defend the zoning, so we were quite happy the city was firm in the belief of what should be there. This was obviously a poor assumption on our part. We have no desire to live across the street from a business. If we're okay with that, there are plenty of mixed-use buildings we could have chosen. Having parking lots, parking lot lights, ambulances, etc. across the street will not only severely change our neighborhood for the worse, it will probably also severely affect our property values. The city should not even be considering this. This could also have a major negative impact on the park, the unofficial heart of the city. And then please include this email as part of the record for the meeting, and please read it at the meeting. All right. You want to speak or come register? Oh, okay, yeah, come on up. I'll read them for you. Yep, if you want to submit them, that'd be great. Thank you. I also have Darlene Van Bendegam from Fitchburg registering in opposition, and Mike Van Bendegam registering in opposition. All right, I think that's all the citizen comments. I'll just verify that. And so before, now the Planning Commission can ask questions and comments and stuff like that. I would like just to make sure everyone knows that we aren't taking any formal action tonight on this, but we are providing feedback on the application on things that we like, don't like, and really that's kind of the point. This isn't necessarily the formal process or application. That would be, well, they got to do a neighborhood, again, another neighborhood meeting, and then they would have to formally submit, and at that point, the Planning Commission would then provide a recommendation to the council, and then go to council from there. So, Randy, did you want to speak? Was that a hand raised?
That is.
All right, go for it.
Yes. First up. I guess, first of all, thank you. A number of concerns, and I've written down, but I'll just touch on a couple of them. I think at least the two at the top of the list is the parking issue and stormwater, and they're a concern of mine as well. Is there a possibility, one of the residents raised a good point as far as reversing the parking. Is that even is that an option, or I'm just curious from maybe from an architectural standpoint, maybe somebody can elaborate on that.
Do you want us to respond, or to wait until everybody's done and then respond all at once?
You can respond to questions from the Planning Commission.
Yeah.
Okay. With regard to stormwater, we will be locating vaults underneath the parking lots to handle stormwater. If you want further discussion about that, I can ask Jessica to describe how all the stormwater will be handled, if.
Well, I
if
would
you'd
be,
like-
I would be curious. I mean, is it stored and is it pumped away? Is it in our storm system?
Yes, it's
Yeah.
detained and scrubbed in underground vaults. And there probably will be some small dry pond areas on the grounds that will not be wet except when it rains. They will hold a little bit of water and release it slowly. All right, I'll turn it over to Jessica, who can explain it better than me.
You're doing so good though, Mike. So we do have a combination system that we're looking at on site. We have our underground vaults, which will be for storage and slow release to the McKee Farms Park stormwater facilities. But we do also have 2 surface basins that will be utilized for infiltration. And they will be in the corner of the site where they meet there in the middle on either side of outlet 3.
Okay. And then,
Now,
go ahead.
With regard to parking?
Sure, let me answer that. We're not looking for parking on the street. We have more than enough parking for our needs on site. You know, some of the concerns I think were, will we have overflow parking in the street? We won't. We don't, I don't know how to say that any other way. We don't need it, we don't want it, we won't have people parking on the street.
Right, but I think one of the residents had mentioned that maybe remove the parking to the rear so they would not have to look at the parking, is what I'm saying. I know there are methods, and you've already described, as far as, you know, plantings and trees and to block that site of parking, but is it possible to have it on the opposite side of the building toward the park side? To remove it altogether from the street?
Yes, that's possible. When we looked at the site and we laid out the design, you know, our preference and the operator's preference is to separate cars from senior residents if possible. So by keeping the cars, the parking on the street face, the same as garages and driveways are on the other side of the street, and then leave the back without cars for the resident patios, for resident enjoyment and safety is how we prefer to do it, rather than put cars on the back of the building, have cars driving on the street on the front of the building, have residents kind of on that island in between traffic. It just didn't seem to make a lot of sense to design it that way.
Okay, well, I just heard it from the residents, and it was a suggestion, so I thought, well, I would follow up with it.
Well, we understand. I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
And we do, we have spoken with the civil engineers. There is room on the plan that we have to berm 3 to 5 feet, a 3 to 5 foot high berm in front of the parking. And then we're talking about using plantings, prairie grasses, dense plantings to further screen any parking that
just
is in the front of
so that we're camouflaging the parking as much as possible.
Well, and basically amplifying the appearance of the building, sure.
Yeah, okay, all right.
And in addition, one point, we did orientate the parking towards the building, so people pulling in and leaving would have headlights facing our building versus out into the street.
Okay, that's a good point, but, okay. Those are my questions for the moment.
All right.
Thank you.
Other questions, Rich?
I had a quick one. What other sites have you looked at for this project?
Well, who's best?
A lot. There's been a number of
Yeah, a
places
lot.
they looked at.
I don't, Don, can you get the list? There's the iHeartRadio site.
If I may,
Yeah, go ahead.
do it from here?
We need you on a microphone so people can hear you online.
You can take my
Feel like I'm in Congress. But I'll tell the truth. We looked at approximately 6 different sites quite thoroughly for a variety of reasons. Every one of them.
Can't hear.
Oh. Hello? Is that better? We looked at about 6 different sites throughout the community, and for a variety of reasons, either through the existing zonings. We looked at, on the main road here, at a few sites. We consulted quite extensively with Mr. Zimmerman, and he helped us navigate which sites would be more appropriate, which less, and all that sort of thing. I think we've been at this for over a year, looking at various sites and running into all kinds of issues. I would like to mention one thing also. The question was asked, how did we determine that there's a need in this area? We use a firm called Plant Moran, which is one of the largest auditing firms in the country, and they specialize in senior housing market research. And there is an overwhelming need, actually, in this market area, specifically for assisted living and memory care. And there's a lot of financial institutions that back these types of projects. They're very sophisticated people who analyze markets and needs all the time. So there's no question that there's a need here. It's really an underserved market. And there was one other thing that wasn't mentioned yet, is that we can, if you like, we can do a traffic study that will reveal actually the light use, if you will. This is probably the least traffic impact type of development that could go on here. It would actually, in our estimation, be far less impactful than townhomes when you do the analysis properly. And we'd be willing to provide that to you.
Thank you. And just speaking on the market need, I'm not going to sit up here and say if there's market need or not, but there's two other projects that are doing essentially very similar, the same services on the agenda tonight. One in Terra Vesta, one in Swan Creek. So just based on the three on the agenda tonight alone, it seems like there is a big need. Everyone does research into is there a need or not. So that, to me, says there is. I'm not here to tell someone you should or shouldn't open a business. They're going to do that research themselves, and that's up for them, up to them. Other questions or comments at all? Yeah, go ahead, Emily.
So one of the concerns that
Make sure to speak into them.
Oh, sorry. Something that I have to focus on sometimes. So one of the concerns that I heard a lot of constituents talking about is the concern about housing prices. And so I did some research. I found a peer-reviewed article in the journal Housing Studies. It was issued in 2020, issue 2, and the title was Neighboring House Transaction Response to Assisted Living Facilities and Nursing Homes. And basically what they were saying is that within a half-mile radius, it can impact negatively, unfortunately, housing prices. But if there is a significant senior community within the neighborhood, it can also be seen as a positive, is because it allows them to age in place. So do you guys have additional studies that support that it won't negatively impact housing prices in this area? Because that's definitely a concern.
I can't point to a specific academic research paper. Is the mic on? No? Okay. I will say, I think that the key thing is how well the facility, if you want to call it facility, the community, we prefer to call it, is run. Is it nice? Are the people happy there? Is it a valuable addition to the community? Or is it, frankly, dumpy? And is it not nice? And are the people there not happy? I think, to me, that's the biggest determinant. We intend this to be a nice community, but I think the character of the building, of the community, of the residents served is the biggest determinant. Just like an apartment building could be positive or negative, depending on what it looks like.
Okay.
In my experience.
Got it. Thank you.
All right. Other thoughts? Zach?
Yeah, I guess I would just say, the concerns that I would have are the stormwater issue. Obviously, that's a big thing in Fitchburg, just in general. So definitely wanting to have a good understanding how that's going to be mitigated. And then obviously the traffic. I think that's a good suggestion to have that traffic study done, because I do think that's a big concern here. So just reiterate those.
One other concern that a lot of people seem to have is staffing. If you can't hire enough people, pay them more. I don't know it's simple. you can get enough people to come if you're willing to pay a reasonable wage.
Yeah, go ahead.
And just to kind of play off of that, some of those concerns that were raised, while they may be valid concerns, we're not here trying to figure out how this business should be run or if it's going to be profitable or if they're going to be able to staff it. Our job is to look as a planning board what this property should look like, what is it designed and developed for, what will this eventually be. I received some emails in the last week or two saying, the city should purchase this and keep it as a park. That's very much not likely going to happen. Right now it is medium density. If I'm familiar, I think medium density is 5 to 8 dwelling units per acre. Is that accurate? 5 to 8? So what the alternative is, if this isn't rezoned, my quick math is that looks at about 44 units. So 44 houses or 22 duplexes could be built on the same property. When we were talking about the concerns that I think are very valid concerns, stormwater, traffic, parking on the street, all of those things, I think when I look at this project, I compare it to what that would represent as 22 duplexes. That's even more than what you all presumably on Wilshire, Bentley, and Rembrandt represent. So you're more than doubling their overall kind of footprint there of housing. And so that is, the ask, what I'm hearing from a lot of people not really supporting this project is to not change the zoning. What that represents to me is an opportunity for a developer to build 44 homes on this exact same lot. And how does that compare to what's being proposed to us today? So that's just sort of to share my mindset and sort of what the alternatives are that could be presented to us. And again, as a planning board, I want to make sure that we're looking at this as what should this be? Is this a good use of this property? Is this the right place? Does it provide the city with the means, that or the resources that we would be looking for, et cetera, et cetera? Not so much if it's being, can be profitable, can hire people, et cetera.
And I think, I just kind of have some of the same concerns with the stormwater. It sounds like you already have some ideas of how to handle that, which is great because this area, does have some concerns with flooding. And so I think that's a huge issue that it sounds like you're already on top of, which is great. I think the traffic study would be great as well. I do think that, in some of the changes from the initial plan to this one actually reduces the traffic impact, which I think is great because it doesn't have the apartment piece to this. And it does also have, one of the buildings only one story and said 2 stories. I think that's another positive as well from what was originally planned. Other than that, I think, just talking about the parking, I do like how you have it on the street side because I don't think, like you said, you don't want to create an island that people have to walk through to get to the park. You want it to be a little more seamless to the park, and it is a unique lot because there's a lot of visibility to the public from both sides. So where does it make sense? I don't know, to me, it seems like you want to have that natural green to green of the park and not have that parking in the middle, but I guess that would be my initial thoughts to that. Is there other feedback or comments from planning commissioners? Like I said, we're not voting on improving anything or not. It's providing feedback, and I think it's great to have the neighbors' feedback as well. And this will be coming back in the future. And I know you're doing a neighborhood meeting. That sounds like sooner than later. So I know that some of our council members will help get the word out about that as well.
Yeah, thank you. And if we could get maybe a list, if addresses, et cetera, we'll send them out. And if we could poll the people that are here tonight to find out if they want the meeting to be in person or via Zoom, we'll be happy to accommodate either.
There's not really a good way to do that. I think we had a lot of people turn out at the one at McKee, but our 2 elders behind you that represent the district, work with them, and they can help you with that.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right. We'll go, okay. Great. We'll go back up to the start of the agenda. Thank you, everyone, for waiting for us. All right, next up is the public hearing and consideration of conditional use permit request, CU 239221. Jerry, thank you for your patience. If you want to come up and let us know, I guess you're registering only. So if you want to speak to what you're doing, you can. Otherwise, we can have staff speak to it for you. I'm not sure where Jerry is, but, all right. All right, staff can go ahead and do a staff report. I'll give you a second to pull it up.
All right, so this one's pretty straightforward. Essentially, so the code requires a rear setback of 35 feet. This is the lot that we're looking at here. Oh, gotta share my screen, huh? Let's see. All right. So per the code, we have a rear setback minimum of 35 feet in this zoning district, but it can be reduced up to 25 feet by conditional use permit for a 3 or 4 season porch. So on the site plan, that's this right here is the proposed porch addition. The request is to reduce it to 31 feet. Staff don't have any concerns as it's allowed per the code by CUP. We notify all residents within 300 feet for a conditional use permit, and we received one letter in support of the request and no letters or calls against the request. So pretty straightforward. If you have any questions.
Any questions or concerns at all? Or a motion?
I'll move to approve conditional use permit CU 2392-21 with no conditions.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right, that's approved. Thank you. All right, next up is architectural design review for 5455 Nobel. And I'm not sure if Dan or Eric or who's gonna speak to this. I think you're all online, so whoever wants to present this and tell us what's going on here, that'd be great.
Sure, this is Dan. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, great. So I'm a facilities and planning consultant representing Promega, involved with this project, and along with Steve Wellenstein from Ramlow Stein, the architectural firm, we'll give you some background on this. So a few notes. The original building was constructed in 2015. The building and site was planned for a future expansion of this type. And the proposed expansion, the use and the function of this is consistent with those original plans. Steve can talk more about the external materials that we'll be applying, but essentially we're trying to create a very consistent look and present a building that looks like one single building, not a building with an addition onto it. So with regard to the preparation for the ADR, I personally reached out to the Quarry Hills Neighborhood Association with the information that we're presenting tonight. They've responded that they feel that it's also consistent with the original plans and the expansion. No concerns about that. We are working out some clarifications and details regarding the noise analysis that was done by our consultant and submitted as part of the ADR. However, I don't feel any of those points are of concern at this point. So we're just clarifying things with that. So with that, I would welcome any questions or turn it over to Steve, who can talk a little bit more about the architectural design itself.
Go ahead, Steve.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, so we looked at this in sort of two ways. The addition to the west, which was originally planned, we enlarged it slightly and moved parking to the back from that, which actually I think will move a little bit less parking on the street and more to the back side of the building, a little friendlier urban-wise. And we have the truck traffic on the back. We're expanding the docks on the back side. Yep, Lisa has it there. Thank you. So that's really just the general sort of site plan. We already planned for stormwater retention on the site, and Ryan could speak to that. I always get retention and dry or wet wrong here, but so we already planned for that on the site on the front, so that's really not changing. We're not affecting that. And then in the elevations, we're really taking the materials of the existing building since we planned on the expansion. Same materials coming through. Sorry, a jet's going overhead. Sorry, the flight path. The materials on the outside are metal panel. There's two different types of metal panel that we had in the original building, a vertical and a horizontal. And then we have a stone, not a stone, but a brick base, and they're large jumbo bricks. So they about the size of a standard CMU block, but they have a brick. They're actually a brick clay at the base of the building. And then we have on the original building, we had a blue metal, smooth metal panel that was in the original on the left of the photo, the top. And we're reproducing that because we're kind of adding another entrance with a building that's getting this big. It's people don't want to walk all the way from their car to a doorway, half the building away, and then walk back the same distance. So we're having a few more entrances to the building to break up the parking and entrances. And we called out that with, again, the blue metal area on the front here. Yeah, right in front of the little pond for water. And then coming around the side of the building, we have existing screen walls that we have plants growing up on the side that actually have done quite well. And we're repeating that pattern on the west facade. There's already that on the east facade. It's on the west facade now, and we'll just, I don't think we'll be able to relocate the plants. We'll have to restart plants, but relocate that same feature on the west facade and add a few more because the building is a little bit deeper in nature than it was originally. So the building will have a feel of not an addition. We stepped back the building 10 feet, so we didn't have one continuous flat facade. So from the street, you get a little relief as the building moves along the street. Same sort of a window pattern to let light into the mass of the building. And on the roof, you can see we have screen walls around equipment on the roof. And then we have one pop-up, which is a sort of a clear story area to let light into the middle of the building for office staff to get some daylight into that middle of that building. I think you have the floor plan too. We could just kind of look at that real quick, Lisa. And the floor plan is just the repeat of what was in the original building. There's warehouse zones and there's processing areas where they're processing parts of the what's in the racks and then shipping out. And then we have a mezzanine and then on the next level. The purple's the racking, and then the mezzanine is more processing, and then white space, and then the blue, sort of the very light blue area to the bottom is offices, the courtyard in the center of the building, large meeting room, and a fitness zone.
All right. Anything else?
Nope.
All right. Then if there's nothing else, Lisa, if you could do a staff report, that'd be great.
All right, so this ADR request is for a 134,000 square foot addition onto the existing Kepler building. The facility is a warehouse industrial use, primarily used for order processing and working with raw materials and finished goods per the applicant. And they are also proposing a temporary parking lot to be used just during construction, which per the conditions of approval will be removed 6 months after occupancy. Maybe I'll just show that on the site plan so that everybody can see. Might take a minute to load. Okay, yeah, so that's this parking lot here on the east side. So they'll have two entrances to the parking lot, and those will be removed and restored as well. And then this area will be restored with native vegetation. And those conditions in terms of restoration and removal will be handled more directly by the erosion control permit, which is handled by Public Works. So staff have not identified any concerns. The recommendation is for approval with 8 conditions as listed in the staff report.
All right, I can open up to Planning Commission questions and comments. I just had one comment, or I guess I'm trying to remember. I believe when you came in earlier with the addition, you're actually using better and higher quality materials than what's on the original building. Am I remembering that correctly?
I think that might be the Nobel Drive.
Oh,
Yeah, that was the Nobel Drive, yeah.
Okay, all right, there's a few projects, sorry.
Yep.
All right, yeah, Emily.
Yeah, this is actually, Lisa, maybe this is a question for you. I noticed in the materials that the Transportation Committee was asking about doing a traffic study, and then they came back with basically saying that since the expansion was noted during the initial phases of approval that one wasn't needed. Is the Transportation Committee content with that? Or are they still pushing for that? Any concerns?
Sure. So I think that was a comment from Public Works staff requesting the traffic impact analysis. So that doesn't typically involve the Transportation Committee with the city, is my understanding. And typically if Public Works makes a comment and then the applicant responds, and if Public Works doesn't provide any follow-up, then they're satisfied with the response. Yeah.
Perfect.
Other questions, concerns, comments? Obviously, Promega has been a great partner for the city and has done a lot of great projects, and I have all the confidence that that will continue. In fact, there's another project coming up next.
I did have one question more so for staff. In the conditions, as noted, number 7, I've noticed is coming up more and more. Is this not already anywhere else that we need to make this a condition for all of our ADRs, and or could that be handled more universally, so that's not a condition?
Right, so it's I think a kind of city standard, and often later on we'll use ADR approvals if there's any issues with compliance. So like say 20 or 30 years down the road, they're retrofitting their lighting or something, or they decide to use different lighting than what was included in the packet, which sometimes like those material decisions change when they actually get to construction, that it's more just like a reminder and a statement of fact that that's the requirement. So I think staff preference is usually to have it as like a matter of record in the conditions.
Okay.
Anything else or motion?
I motion to approve.
8.
Let's see, architectural design review for 5455 Noble Drive
With the 8 conditions.
with the 8 conditions.
All right.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Seconded by Rich. All in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right, that is approved. All right, next up is the CSM for it's all part of the same project, really, the next 3. And so I'm not sure who wants to speak to this one first. There's a few people, I think, online. So whoever would like to kick this one off and present it can go ahead.
So this is for the USONA application, the certified
Yes,
survey map rezone and ADR.
All right. Would someone from Promega or one of their groups they're working with want to kind of tell us about this project? I think,
Hey,
Bill,
Bill, I
if you're
think you're
speaking,
muted.
you're
I
on
think
mute.
Bill's talking, but he's muted,
Sorry,
sorry.
Bill.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, Steve, I'm wondering if you wanted to kind of frame up the project.
Yes, the USONA project is, I think the first thing up is the CSM So it's the combination of the land that Cinque Terre has put together into one parcel. And I think we have Jim Bricker is in the audience right now. Jim wasn't on, his internet went down, so he's in there personally. Jim could talk to the CSM here a little bit better than I can, if he wishes to.
Jim, I think they're asking for you to, they're phoning a friend.
Yeah.
If you want to come on up. I guess
on the CSM
phone
portion
is
of this, yes.
calling the friend.
I think this is the first part of the project here, is to take the parcels and change them, combining them into the one outlot, the one lot, and then the outlot, and then the.
All right, we've got Jim here for you.
There I was, safe in the back row.
Yeah.
Okay, the CSM combines a relatively large parcel that has been unplatted before with a series of portions of lots from what was called the Fitchburg Center North Plat, and ostensibly to create Lot 1, which is the location for the SONA Institute. Outlot 1 is a slight reconfiguration of an existing outlot that's there now. That's where the trail is, and it connects from Woods Hollow Road over to where the observatory is. Then Lot 2 is where get the names right, the Da Vinci building is.
Yes.
And connects down to Bjorkston Place, which is the access road out to Fish Hatchery Road. So that's the configuration, and how all those parts were put together and the easements relocated is all done through the CSM.
All right. There's nothing else. We can do a staff report on the CSM portion anyway.
Sure, so I might just give a kind of quick overview of all of them.
Great.
And then note the conditions. So there's the 3 applications. So certified survey map CS-2389-21, rezone request RZ-2390-21, and then the architectural design review for USONA. So all these 3 applications are the next round of required approvals to allow Promega's USONA facility to proceed. So we've seen a couple of applications come through already to allow the project to move forward. Right now, it's a certified survey map primarily to kind of clean up the lot lines and redefine existing lots. The rezone is to rezone the property to SIP zoning, so PDD SIP, and then ADR for the actual site and structural development of the USONA facility. And that ADR would allow for an approximately 92,000 square foot facility, plus the 2 cottages for the patient therapy. And then there is, just for the record, an existing residence that would remain on the property to be removed after the current occupant permanently vacates the building. So that would be removed as a part of the construction of the USONA facility. So for the staff recommendation is for approval with all standard conditions. So the certified survey map is for approval with 10 conditions, including a few regarding clarification of easements and just some easements and some notes on the certified survey map. The rezone is recommendation for approval with 4 standard conditions. Just a matter of record, there's a typo on the ordinance that refers to the GIP instead of the SIP. So staff would just correct that typo before referring that back to council. And then ADR is for approval with 7 conditions, mostly standard, just including that removal of the residence once occupancy is discontinued.
All right. So for just the CSM part, is there questions, comments, thoughts from Plan Commission at all? Or motion?
I'll motion.
Okay.
Motion to approve certified survey map. Let me jump back here. Certified survey map request CS-2389-21 with the 10 conditions.
Is there a second?
Second.
Sent by Emily. All in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right, that is approved. All right, so next is the rezone request, and I'm not sure if that's you, Jim, or someone online. I don't know.
I'll defer to everyone else.
Anything you want to add, Steve, or anyone else?
Oops, sorry. Oh, I am talking, I am open. Yeah, I think, Jim, you probably can talk to this one too for the rezoning. If you-
All right, Jim, it's all you.
That's what I get.
Put it back to Jim. Sorry,
Okay.
Jim.
This is just the standard next step in the process. So you approved the GIP a couple months ago. We've taken care of all the paperwork for that. And now this moves to the SIP approval, which gets it to the actual rezoning so that we can submit the ADR and get the building started.
All right. Anything you want to add, Lisa?
Yeah, just a note that the PDD SIP is what enables the issuance of building permits, and they provide that kind of higher level of analysis. They're providing the site plan with specific development parameters, finalizing the allowable uses. So we have the ordinance on the screen here, just noting that it's conditioned upon council approval of the certified survey map, and then the development standards include permitted uses in the BP zoning district, nursing and personal care facilities, conference center, so that's to facilitate the anticipated training on site. And then we also highlighted the short-term lodging for patients and caregivers. So this is where we're defining that kind of customized permitted uses in the PDD zoning district for this property specifically. We have a building height maximum, which is consistent with, I think, industrial uses and our business uses as well. Minimum open space of 50%, floor area ratio of 0.5, and then some parking minimum standards, which is typical in PDD zoning as well. Per the PDD, signage shall follow sign regulations for business districts. They have not proposed any kind of customized signage, so they could come forward with that later, which is what we've seen with other developments, but is not being proposed at this time.
All right. I will then open the public hearing. I don't have any public comments or anyone from the public that wants to speak, so I'll close the public hearing and then open up to further questions or comments from Plan Commission.
I guess just one maybe question. Were there any changes or anything between GIP and SIP?
I believe, and maybe the applicant can confirm, that there were some minor changes to the site plan. So like the location of the cottages were finalized, the actual kind of drive access, location of the parking. So we can take a look at that site plan.
Jim, do you want to speak to that?
I can try.
The outlet was changed a little bit, it sounds, someone said.
When we first started in the previous process, the actual configuration of the cottage units was still kind of morphing around a little bit, and they shifted in location. There's also some changes to the way the walkway worked between, if I'm remembering correctly, between Woods Hollow Drive and the front of the building, and parking configuration. They were all very minor and still kind of within the overall general approvals that were previously given.
Anything else? Or a motion?
I can move. How many conditions were there? I didn't see any in the packet.
It looks like it says.
4, wasn't it?
For the reason?
Or is it approval as drafted in the PDD SIP ordinance enclosed in the
Yeah, that
packet?
works as well.
So if you want to read, I don't know if you have there's that sentence right there, approval.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, no, I'll move to approve the rezone request RZ 2390-21 with the 4 conditions as noted.
And I'll second.
Sent by Rich. All in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right, that part is approved. And now the ADR. Who was going to speak to that piece? Jim?
No, that's not me.
No, oh,
No,
okay.
that's not Jim, no. Sorry, Jim. You're free now.
Yeah, phew.
All right, go ahead, whoever's going to speak to this one.
Sure, I can speak to the, Bill, did you, or David, did you want to talk about USONA?
I could, yeah, I'd be happy to maybe give a couple of brief comments. And this is really by way of kind of background. So USONA was founded, it's an institute, it's a nonprofit medical research organization founded in 2014. And it was really based on early research that had been done and continues at New York University, UCLA, Johns Hopkins, and a couple of other major research centers in Europe. We approached the FDA in 2017 and received guidance from them on a pathway for the approval of a specific drug. It's called psilocybin for major depressive disorder. And this is for approval in a very carefully controlled therapeutic setting. So it's not just something that would be prescribed, but it's something that has to be given in a particular setting. USANA is also providing this material to over 100 research teams throughout the world. So in the last 5 years, the interest in this has really increased substantially to the extent that the FDA, in fact, gave us a special designation called Breakthrough Therapy Designation, where they recognize the potential of this treatment for meeting a large unmet need. And our initial indication is major depressive disorder. It affects about 17 million people just in the United States. There are indications that this can also be used for treatment of various addictions, opiate addiction, alcohol, and also other kinds of things like eating disorders and so forth. The facility will support a staff of around 50 people ultimately, and we have 4 specially designed therapy rooms. Education and training is going to be a large part of this. We expect that there will be people from many different communities throughout the United States that will want to come here to see how a center is designed, to look at the therapy centers and rooms themselves, and will provide training as well, ultimately to thousands of people who over the years will want to receive the kind of training necessary to provide this specialized medical treatment.
Thank you, Bill. So I can run through the site plan, and that's what we can run through.
That'd be great.
We have the site on Woods Hollow in Gunflint, and we have our entrance off of Gunflint, which starts from the circle and heads south on the page or down on the page. And then we come up quite a steep grade. Have to take the road and kind of wind it a little bit to make this grade work. It's about a 40-foot, I would say it's about a 40-foot height difference from the road to where the building plateau is. So we come up and we have the building oriented to the circle sort of drive of the road. Off to the right, you can see sort of a path that leads to, I think we call it a hammerhead turnaround zone for fire truck access to the side of the building and to the 2 residences that are on that side or short stay area. And then we have the entrance into the building, main entrance to the left as it forks, and then the entrance to the therapy part of the building to the right. Then as you come down the drive even farther, then we have a underground parking ramp that goes down to underground parking under the main building. And if you see, there's a portion here that Lisa's looking at right now, that has grass over it. And that is underground parking underneath there also, and that's a future portion of the building for expansion. We could build on top of that in the future. We're kind of planning for, hopefully, things to change over time and grow. And then the road continues up to a circle, which is behind, to what used to be a dead end road at the backside of Da Vinci. So this will allow fire department access through this road to both sites, both across the USANA site and then onto the Promega site. And then the building in this area right now, there are some trees, not very many specimen trees. We had one specimen tree, a hickory, which you can see on the front of the building that we saved. And then we positioned the building to save a series of oaks that sort of wrap around it. Oaks that are probably in the 100+ year range that wrap around this zone. So we did our best, and that's what we spent a lot of time on the building, arranging it and putting a kink in it. so we could keep those trees intact and not damage that, that forest.
All right. Anything else?
Okay, that's really the site. The elevations we could probably go to, Lisa.
Yep, it might just take a second to load.
Oh, yeah, no, sorry. Yeah, I know, they're kind of big files.
But maybe you can start to kind of describe, all
Oh,
right,
yeah.
here we are.
The base of the building is a stone base, and then above that is a wood siding, cedar siding, and that'll be a natural color, similar in nature to what's on Agora, the siding. Just to give you a frame of reference, we have a slate roof. Not slate, I'm sorry, a terracotta roof. Not terracotta color, but terracotta tile. More of a grayish sort of color right now we're looking at. And then we have wood trim that's painted, and then aluminum clad high performance windows on the windows. And we have a clear story, sort of our center atrium's portion that you can see, that image. And then the next one down, we do have a first floor, and then we have a sunken sort of walkout basement, if you will, and then the second floor above that. Yeah, and then that's the front entrance to the USONA Institute, and to the right where the sort of trellis is, that's the entrance to the therapy part of the section, part of the building. And this was the short stay residence areas, meant to be small little cottages, in the nestled into the woods. We actually, was one of our discoveries when we were working with the trees on site. We found a nice little portion of open area. We're nestling one of these cottages in that opening in the woods. So I have a nice view of the woods and out to the Ninth Springs Preserve. And I think there's a little floor plan there. So it's a 2-bedroom unit. Both of them are 2-bedroom, living room, dining room, kitchen. And the floor plans are next. And this shows a underground parking. And then we have therapy spaces down in this area for hydrotherapy or for other treatments. And the first floor is the main floor with training in the blue, USONA offices, or training in the green, USONA offices in the blue. And then the sort of terracotta color is the therapy zones, therapy staff in the main building, and then actual therapy rooms off to the right. Last one is the second floor, which could be more training on the upper floor, training staff, and then the white space for office or different therapy modalities. That's probably it. I don't want to go too long because the bucks are going to start.
All right. Lisa, anything you want to add from staff perspective? You talked about some of this already, I think.
Yep, I think we've seen the project a few different.
No, there you go.
There you go. Okay, yeah, we've seen this project come through a few different times, so hopefully we've had a chance to kind of address any questions or comments, and staff have found it to be consistent with the previous approvals.
All right. Comments, questions at all? Randy?
Just one quick question. The cottages, I mean, well, it looks like you're using some high-quality products. I mean, did I say terracotta roof? Are the cottages similar to the main building then, as far as the materials? I see lots of shaking of heads, so, okay. Thank you.
Sorry, I muted myself.
Anything else? Or a motion?
I motion to approve architectural design review USONA with the 7 conditions.
Right.
Second.
Approved by Stephen. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
And opposed, nay. All right, that is approved. Thank you, everyone. All right, moving along to E, and actually the next few really are about the same project here. I'm sorry, not E, we're down to F. And this is the River Song project coming up. I think F, G, and H are all relating to the same project here. Buck start in a minute, so go. No. Just kidding.
Works for me. I'm Matt Mothy. I'm the CEO for Marquardt Management Services, and we're the owners and the operators of Riversong. We've had the privilege of talking with you and working with the staff for the past year or so. We're a faith-based nonprofit organization based in Watertown, and are looking to grow our mission to meet and serve the needs of people in our communities. We have a large home health and hospice presence in Dane County now, including in the Fitchburg area, and are really feel very blessed to be asked to be a part of the Terravesa project. We've gotten to know Phil over the years and feel like it's a wonderful opportunity for a multi-generational component, and for us to be asked to be part of that, we feel very blessed, like I said. Our project is what we consider to be a life plan community, so it's independent living for seniors, it's assisted living as well as memory care. What the project that we're looking to do allows people to age in place, which we've shared with you in the past, and we're here to present on a couple of issues today that both Kevin and Eric will walk through, and then all three of us are available for questions.
Perfect. Hello, everybody. Kevin Yesko with JSD. So with this project, we will be replatting some of the existing lands out there, and that's actually the plat you see up on the screen right now. So we'll be replatting lots 40, 41, 40, sorry, I got to read my 42, 43, and 44, and then also outlot 17, which is the southeast corner of this property, as well as outlot 16, which is the public alley through the site. So simple replat process. We are looking at 5 lots, two lots, lot 1 and lot 2 for development, and then we will also have an outlot 1 and 2, which will serve as access for the development, this will all make a lot more sense once the site plan is brought up. And then last but not least, outlot 2 down in the corner is reserved for that private civic space. So pretty simple replat process, but part of the approval. So
jumping to architectural, we can take all three at once. While the replat might be a little bit simple, the architecture has been a work in progress. We've been happy to work with staff as we've looked at these 5 parcels, and as they become 2, we've designed the buildings around the intent of meeting the SMART code, and we've worked around a few things to do so. First and foremost, this is a overall senior living community with a shared entrance and commons area that would be usable for all residents and guests. So that commons area and those amenities would span across both the independent living resident areas and the assisted living residential areas. The commons area would be spanning across there and addressing both the street frontage on Lacey and coming across to address the street frontage on Brassica as well. As an overall community, the goal is that residents within independent living also have direct access to loved ones, husbands, spouses, wives, that would be in the assisted living portion of the project as well. So architecturally, we take great care to ensure that that connectivity is possible. A couple of the key components for the architecture are the forecourts, which have been developed along Brassica to not only provide some relief along the street, but kind of respect the previous lot lines that were there on the site. That relief on the street provides a regular rhythm for architectural buildings that you would typically see, but then also for the benefit of our residents within the building, they provide a relief from the corridor experience and gives them opportunity to see natural daylight when just circulating throughout the building. Another item that we would like to address here is the access off of Lacey to a shared common entry, but also to a more of a public commons amenity with the bistro, which would be able to be accessed off of Lacey, but then also off of the outlot, which is going to be the public plaza. These residents will have a lot of visitors and feel like they want to socialize with the greater community. Matt mentioned the multi-generational aspect. So as that plaza is developed and becomes kind of a heart of the community, these residents and their visitors would be able to benefit from that as they look out onto it and directly interact. Finally, on the overall architecture, one of the big pieces is Lot 1 and the independent living component would have underground parking, meeting the needs of all of the residents and some staff. The visitor parking that is present on site has been set back off of the street and shielded by the street frontage we've created with the buildings, as has the service area for the building. As we work up into the elevations, we are using very similar to the colors and aesthetics that you saw on the Promega property. A lot of natural stone, wood look, Nietzsche hot panels, fiber cement with, stucco and ephes with a light natural color, and then a mixture of stone and brick. The independent living building has a lot more relief to it. It has the recesses that we're asking for, 50-inch relief for the balconies, which creates a nice natural vertical orientation of the architectural materials. And then on the assisted living and commons area, there's a slight change in the architecture as the CBRF nature doesn't have as many outdoor spaces. But we are using some key components where a staff member may be able to take a resident out to an outdoor space, and it's allowing us not only to provide that outdoor access, but then also some vertical reconfiguration of the materials as you look at those buildings. So it's two distinct uses, but combined together on one site. And again, any other questions that you guys might have architecturally, happy to answer. 3 minutes.
All right, if there's nothing else, let's do a staff report.
All right. So here we have 2 items that are related. First, it's the final plat amendment request, FPA-2392-21. Give a brief staff report on that. So the proposed plat reconfigures lots in Terra Vista to accommodate the proposed Riversong senior housing development. The plat would create the 2 developable parcels and then 2 driveway outlots and an outlot plan for civic space. And I just want to pull up the plat real quick just to point out a few things. Okay, that went pretty quick. So these are, this was specifically allowed because of the ordinance amendment that was approved recently to create Special District 3, which was created to accommodate a senior housing campus. And as you may remember, one of the biggest things that was accommodated through the creation of a Special District 3 was to increase the maximum lot width. So here you can see this proposed Lot 1 is going to front the entire length of Brassica Road here. Because of the bend in the lot, as you can see here, the lot width is actually measured on either side. So the lot in total is about 600 feet in width, but because of the orientation of the lot, each half is about 300 feet. I would note that the Common Council would need to approve a waiver on the final plat to allow a width wider than 300 feet. So when we went through and created Special District 3, the maximum lot width that's allowed by right is 300 feet, but it's allowed to be up to 350 feet if council approves a waiver in the resolution that approves the plat. So again, just kind of tying it back to elements of smart code which establish maximum lot widths. So if you're going to kind of go beyond a standard, which is 300 feet, is typically the largest lot width you would see in smart code, that brings that extra level of approval from council. So that's one element that would have to be considered. Staff have not identified any concerns, and recommendation is for approval with the 10 conditions as noted by staff. As you can see as well, just briefly, Lot 2 will be fronting Lacey Road and Ruggiero with that civic space there at the corner, which is going to be a private civic space and designed by the developer. And then for the architectural design review, so let me just pull up the site plan so we can take a little bit of a closer look. Okay, so as we've mentioned before, the applicant is proposing a senior housing campus with 128 independent living units on Lot 1, and then 60 assisted living units on Lot 2, and they will be connected by a common space element in the middle of the lots, which will actually result in a zero lot line building, which means that the wall of the structure is going to be built on the lot line, or essentially, and they will be sharing that wall, so it's a zero lot line building. I think this site plan, they included the floor plan, so it's a little bit busy, but maybe we can take a look at each individual floor just to kind of get a better handle of the operations on site. So this is the basement, so this is the parking, underground parking being provided on Lot 1. They're providing parking and then also bicycle parking. So that just provides a little idea there. Then this is going to be the first, don't want to go too fast. All right, so this is the ground floor, the first floor. So as they mentioned here, they are incorporating 2 forecourt elements along Brassica to sort of break up the massing of the building. They are requesting an administrative approval that can be approved by staff to increase the depth. So typically, per the code, you'd see a forecourt that's set back about 20 feet from the property line. They're requesting approval to go 40 feet behind the property line. I think staff generally don't have many concerns with that, just given the scale of the building, that perhaps that's kind of more appropriate to increase the forecourt depth there. As the applicant mentioned, they are requesting 2 administrative approvals that specifically are approved by Plan Commission. So the first one is for approval of up to a 50-inch recess behind the primary setback to accommodate outdoor living spaces. So we can see here, I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see what we're looking at. It's a little bit slow. But as we've discussed in the past, that typically a porch or a deck is considered an encroachment in smart code, which means that it projects off of the building facade, but we have made accommodations in the code to allow for recesses to accommodate those outdoor living spaces, so patios or decks, to recess as opposed to encroach. This is something that was included in that smart code amendment. I think you'll see here a little bit they provide more of the dimensions and the measurements for each one of those. So that's something that Plan Commission, if they approve this architectural design review, they would be approving the administrative approval for that 50-inch recess. And then they, so as you can see here, typically this is essentially their building facade. I don't know if I can zoom in anymore. So what you have here is the primary setback. So they're establishing this sort of main facade here is the primary setback. They're allowed a 1.5 foot recess just generally to accommodate, some building articulation, and that's allowed by right. And that means that all this facade is going towards their frontage build-out requirement, which we've discussed as well in the past. And what we're allowing is this recess here to accommodate outdoor living spaces. And you'll see that they are located throughout the development, more so on the independent living side, as the applicant has pointed out. So you can see how that recess occurs. So similar to like with the conditional use permit, an administrative approval does have standards for reviewing an administrative approval. And I did just want to highlight those as well. So, general standards, no administrative approval shall be approved unless the reviewing authority shall find the approval would be consistent with section 1.3 of the SMART Code, advance the presence of the intended form of the development, advance pedestrian-friendly activity, provide for the enhancement, coordination, or demarcation between the public and private realm, and be consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive plan. So we've talked in the past about what the impact of greater building recesses has on creating a street wall, creating spatial containment for the pedestrian, things like that. But the accommodation was included in the code to allow for the greater recess. So that would be approved with this administrative approval. And then similarly, a second administrative approval is requested. And this is another thing that came up through the creation of Special District 3 was the location of the utility easements that are basically, they front all the right-of-ways. And it slightly impacts the site planning because we don't allow any structures within our utility easements. So that includes stairs, patios, not just the building itself. So one of the accommodations that was made in Special District 3 is that we would allow a greater recess to accommodate a main building entrance. So again, typically the code tries to reduce the amount of recesses in the building, but given the utility easements located on site, which is this blue line here on the site plan, and because they have to provide a main building entrance along Lacey, the utility easement was gonna prevent them from providing the stairs, which are needed due to the grading of the site. So a second administrative approval is essentially approving about 7 feet 8 inch recess to allow a common entry into the building. And this is the assisted living building on lot 2. This is one of the entrances that could be used by the public to access that bistro sort of element that the applicant described. So the bistro would be located here in the corridor. Just some comments on the bistro, since the applicant noted it as well. So the building includes a small area for use as a bistro accessible to the public as detailed in the staff report. So you can see that they provide this entrance here on Lacey as sort of the main building entrance, which is required per the code. They also provide some internal access points, so from the parking lot, and then as well as this entrance here facing that civic space, so providing multiple modes of entry. So I think from a staff perspective, and we've shared this with the applicant, is that ideally this kind of use would be maybe located more directly on the street with more direct public access to better activate the space. This is something that Plan Commission could discuss further, but this is where that bistro space is provided. The applicant has also indicated that they might have some, gallery space provided here along Lacey Road that the members of the public, so in the neighborhood, could potentially rent some of the common space. So providing that amenity to the neighborhood as a whole. So these are some things that are happening there. I think those are the main points we wanted to highlight. Staff recommendation is for approval with 11 conditions as listed in the staff report.
All right, I do have one registration form from Phil Sveum, registering in support of both F, G, and H, which we'll talk about next.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Just a reminder to everyone who spoke at the meeting to fill out a public registration form, and you can just leave it at the end.
All right. So comments, questions from Planning Commission on either the final plat amendment request or the ADR? Yeah, Randy.
I'm just going to ask one question regarding the easement. I know you've highlighted, that goes all the way around, correct?
Yes.
And it's right directed for staff. Why didn't we just use public road right away?
Nope, you want it up here.
Oh, the red light
right
up here
here.
means it's on. All right, we're figuring it out. So it's like per city ordinance, we don't allow easements in the right of way. So that would be a ordinance amendment that would have to be proposed. But as of now, that's not something we allow.
Right, no, I fully understand that, but I mean, if you're using an easement for facilities, any type of infrastructure, telephone, water, power, why, normally it's in public road right of way to begin with, and then is this all out of public road right of way and in the easement instead? I'm.
Yeah, so this is like utility easements, so gas and electric are provided here. I think my understanding is that the preference is to have it off of city property for like long-term maintenance purposes, so you're not having to tear up sidewalk and replace that to maintain utilities.
All right, well, as long as the developer's fine with it, I don't know, I seem to think it's redundant. I mean, I've designed for telecommunications on public road right away, and then you take it in, so, but as long as the developer's fine with it, that's fine, yeah, okay. Is the city requesting it? Is planning requesting that easement?
So it's per city ordinance. The utilities are located on private property.
Yeah, it's pretty common. A lot of that stuff is actually. There's usually a lot of easements on a lot of stuff.
No, I fully understand. We can take this offline.
Yeah, and
thank you.
Public Works staff might also be better suited to discuss easement requirements for utilities as well.
Other questions or comments at all? Yeah, Emily.
Has there been discussion about moving the bistro like out towards Lacey, or basically not being right off the square, but being right against one of the roads?
We have discussed it a few times. As we've looked at the operations of the community, we want the bistro to be as close to the kitchen as possible. Staffing's been brought up a number of times tonight from previous applicants, but if we can have less footsteps from the kitchen to the bistro, it's beneficial. So we felt like that was a place where it benefited from the town square. It still was on the more public face of the building, but also close enough to the kitchen, which was a key component to the layout.
Any other questions or comments? Stephen?
Just looking at the plans of it, have we talked about anything? I'm trying to get this out. Have we looked at impervious surface? And because it looks like it would be almost 100% other than that outlot B. So wondering about stormwater here.
Yeah, so Smart Code in general allows for a much higher impervious surface ratio than we see in other parts of the city. So in Transect 5, you can have up to 90% lot coverage, and I think they're pretty close on both. I can pull up the engineering plans, and then also the subdivision was designed so that stormwater facilities were provided for these projects. So it's different than a lot of the kind of multifamily development we see in other parts of the city.
Anything else? Or a motion?
I move to approve the final plat amendment request, FPA 2392-21 with the 10 conditions as noted by staff.
Second.
All right, seconded by, I'll give it to Zach. All in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay? All right, that is approved. Any further comments or questions on the ADR? Or a motion?
Quick question, maybe, do we, excuse me, need to do anything special with those administrative waivers?
No, they would be approved as a part of the ADR approval, yeah.
And I'll move to approve the ADR for Riversong Senior Housing with the 11 conditions as noted.
I'll second.
Sent by Rich. All in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right, that is approved. Moving along, now we have Resolution R 4821. It's releasing a public utility easement. I don't know if you want to speak to that, or you just want staff to speak to it?
Speak to it, yeah.
Lisa, all right,
Yeah.
go for it.
All right, so item H is Resolution R-48-21, a resolution releasing a public utility easement in Outlot 16 in Terra Vesta. So currently, there is an outlet from Reggio to Lacey that was going to be used as an alley access and for utilities. So given the replatting, we no longer need that utility easement, so the city is going to release that with approval of that resolution.
Any questions or comments? Or a motion so we can watch the Bucks?
I'll move approval of resolution R-48-21.
Second.
Said by Emily. All in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay? All right, that is also approved. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
All right, next up is I, preliminary plat amendment request. Phil, I don't know if you're speaking to this, maybe? I think so. Yeah, that's fine. Yep.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Mayor. Just a couple of quick comments. Pretty excited about bringing on this second edition to Terra Vesta. Obviously, the appetite for housing in that area and all over has been very strong. This addition will also bring another access to the school, which I think is really important for a traffic flow standpoint. So I think that our plan would be is we have a final approval of the plat. This summer, we will engage with construction over the fall, all the underground, like we did with this last edition, and finish it up next spring and early summer, so the lots will be available. There was a large oak tree, which we'd probably always consider a legacy oak, that is, and that's what I passed around the photos of, that became kind of a point of contention because it was looked upon as a tree that would last for a long time by some staff person. And I had it further analyzed, and you can see the photos of the tree, and he thought it should be taken down almost immediately because of the danger of it, because of the condition of it. So in this back and forth, we were talking about adding more oak trees to an outlot on Mizuna. I had suggested we not put trees on an outlot there, but add to the oak savanna, which is just west of the school, which we donated, I believe, 3 other oak trees last year. And I offered to donate an additional 3 oak trees to that oak savanna, which I think over time is really going to be a special place for everyone, including the people in the school. So I'm requesting that 3 of the lots be on Mizuna be part of the residential development. We'll have 1 outlot for a little open space. I think it's 0.45 acres. And by the way, I realize there's only 45 acres of parkland that's been dedicated, but there's a total of almost 110 acres that were set aside for open space and parkland of this 250-acre area. So there's a lot of open space, a lot of parkland. I even think that the southerly outlot on Mizuna is really not necessary. But as long as it was on our preliminary plat and you would like it there, fine. But I would like to hold the outlot 57, and put that back into a residential lot. And we will donate then 3 oak trees to I would suggest to the oak savanna just west of the school. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward.
All right, staff report, please.
All right, so this is for preliminary plat amendment request PPA-2394-21. So I'll just give a brief kind of higher higher level overview, and then we can get into, as Phil was discussing, about the outlots with the trees in the public space. So this is a preliminary plat revision for the Terra Vista neighborhood. So this actually includes, the entirety of the remaining developable land that hasn't already been platted via final plat. So the preliminary plat was originally approved in 2016. So this revision would create 432 buildable lots and 33 outlots. And those outlots are a mixture of public civic space, private open space, and then a lot of these alley access points that you see throughout the plat. So those are what those 33 outlots are for. In comparison, the first preliminary plat for Terra Vista created 793 buildable lots and 63 outlots. Overall, the density and number of townhomes is reduced. So per Phil, the demand for housing and platting in this neighborhood is evident based on the build out of the existing lots. So I think the plan is to come forward with a final plat for a portion of this neighborhood. You can see the biggest changes really is that some of the lot widths have increased. Partially that is to provide single family homes. So if you see here on Mizuna Drive, these lots that front Mizuna Drive were originally had a smaller lot width and were probably intended to be more like townhomes. Maybe duplexes would have worked there as well. But now the lot width has increased sufficiently to allow for single family house development. Some of the interior lots here have been widened a little bit too, but I don't think the expectation there is to see single family homes, but just to provide a little bit of more diversity. And I think staff doesn't really have any concerns with decreasing the density and providing a wider range of houses. So you can see, as we move north through the remainder of the preliminary plat, there's still a lot of townhouse lots being provided. I think, you see there's still gonna be single family lots provided as you get kind of to the edges of the subdivision, which I think is consistent with SMART co-principles for providing a variety of housing types. The location for these transects is appropriate. So no real concerns in terms of the reduction in density and the changes in the housing that will result from this. So as Phil mentioned, we did have some lengthy discussions about these sections of lots. Here, let me just pull them up. So this is Swale Road, Mizuna, and then Lacey Road. So just to provide some background and context, so originally this kind of end cap, which is now proposed outlot 57, 2 residential lots, and then outlot 56, which is dedicated to the public for park purposes. And the reason that this is dedicated specifically is because in SMART code, a playground is supposed to be provided within 1,000-foot radius. So the idea that you're providing civic space within walking distance, you're creating those kinds of small scale neighborhood, maybe even like pocket park kind of concept. So that playground does have to be provided somewhere. This, I think right now is basically right within that 1,000-foot radius. That doesn't mean it needs to be provided here, but that does need to be provided in this general area. So originally, because, through a while ago, there was a tree inventory done for the entire sort of northeast neighborhood area, and it identified a tree located here at Outlet 57 as being a specimen oak tree and sort of worthy of conservation. Again, that was many years ago. So when the preliminary plat was approved in 2016, this entire area was going to be green space, primarily to protect the roots of this oak tree, given that the roads that were being put in were going to cause root pruning along these corners, and that the outlot would then provide sufficient space, ideally, for that oak to still thrive despite the development occurring. So that was sort of the thought process. As Phil mentioned, he did commission a report from an arborist which states that the tree condition is failing and should be removed. The city forester reviewed the report and went out into the field to look at the tree and agreed that the tree could be removed, especially with the implication that it might cause a risk to the public, and that if the report is out and it states that it's a risk, that that's something to be considered. She agrees that it's not in great condition. And if the root pruning, if additional root pruning is going to occur because of, residential lots being located in the vicinity, then that's going to sort of further the decline of the tree. So as a compromise to, I think, losing that green space and the tree being removed, the forester requested that the developer provide 4 oak trees to the specification and approval of the city forester. So that's included as a condition. And this was kind of an ongoing discussion as we've developed the staff memo. So per the developer, per Phil, he would like to plat Outlot 57 as a buildable lot. So we would have 3 residential lots, and then Outlot 56 would remain as park space. In the staff memo, we had asked that 2 residential lots be platted, so Outlot 57 and Outlot 288, and that additional open space would be dedicated to the public to increase the size of that playground. As Phil has mentioned, there's a lot of parkland that has been dedicated so far. They meet the code requirements for smart code for the size of a playground lot. With discussions with the forester, I think there was just a preference to provide some provide opportunities for trees to grow in this area, to provide shade in the civic space. This item will also be going to Park Commission at our August 6th or 5th meeting before returning to council. So they, as a part of their duties, review all parkland dedication. So Outlot 56 is being dedicated, and there's another sort of smaller neighborhood park that will be serving a similar purpose to the north. So they will be reviewing this scenario as well and providing their recommendation. I think as it stands now, the recommendation does ask for a larger outlot and 2 residential lots, but those conditions can be amended by Plan Commission if they feel that it's appropriate. I don't know, Bill, if you had any other comments.
I just think the 4 oak, I think it's just arbitrary. It's just, there's no rationale to request that. And we do buy all the city trees, all the terrace trees we provide payment for. The city plants them. You'll have park improvement fees because of this neighborhood. So you can plant trees with those. I mean, I'll offer to put in 3 other oaks, but I would just like to see them planted in the Oak Savanna. But if that's not the case, I still think that Outlot 57 should be a residential lot.
All right, are you done with the report? Is Bruce Sweeney still here? Okay, I don't know, maybe you want to speak on the first item. All right, sorry, Bruce. All right, so open up to questions or comments. One question I just had is if Lot 50, Outlot 57, I guess, became like a buildable lot, is that for house, condo, apartments?
Those would be all single family.
Okay.
On that side, yeah.
Great. I mean, obviously, there's a huge demand for that, and I'm all for more opportunities.
There'll be quite a variety of housing again in this little part of the neighborhood.
Great. Okay. Other questions, comments, Rich?
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think it's kind of arbitrary or vague with that item about the 4 trees, 3 trees. I would like to see that stricken because, well, I agree with Phil. We don't have any details here about what he's going to want. Is he going to want 4 trees that are a foot in diameter or 4 trees that are a centimeter in diameter? I don't see any of that spelled out, and we already heard that our city forester has concurred that the tree needs to come down. So in the interest of public safety, I think we ought to just strike that item entirely.
So you're saying that we shouldn't require the developer to provide any additional trees?
That's my point, yes.
Additional trees and land?
That tree should go down anyhow, right? And what
That
we're
tree
doing
should
is
come down.
it's a trade-off because of that tree. So that's where the 4 or the 3 trees came from, was because of that coming down, right?
So you still want, you still would like 3 trees to be donated, not necessarily here, but 3 trees.
I think he's going beyond what he should need to do because that tree would have to come down no matter what. So he's offering to put the 3 trees in. I don't know if we want to, I don't know how we want to word that. I would just as soon see the thing stricken, and if Phil wants to put the trees by the savanna, that's wonderful.
So I guess I would just note that that was a recommendation from the city forester that the trees be provided.
But he also said that that the tree should be taken down,
So
right?
she noted that the report provided by the arborist that Phil hired noted that the tree, there was decay, and she went out and said that yes, it's decaying. I think some argument can be made that if all that green space was left, the root pruning that would occur would be less. So I think, there's, some gray area there about the viability of a tree. You might get a different opinion from a different arborist that you hire, but I think she agrees that the report noted that there was a risk to public safety, and then that becomes a liability as well if we allow the tree to exist, but that a report was published many years ago that noted that this was a specimen tree that should be preserved, and that we're now going to lose, a specimen oak tree.
It's interesting that there were five specimen trees, 5 specimen oaks that were preserved in the oak savanna. And frankly, after I think they were turned over to the city, everyone came to the conclusion that they probably didn't need to be saved, unfortunately. But it was all farmland around there for many, many years, and it doesn't, the practices just were not maybe the greatest to preserve the trees versus cultivate the soil. So, I mean, it's all kind of in the eye of the beholder on it, honestly. I would much rather preserve younger oak trees than the older ones, because you're going to have a longer term and a better result over a period of time. But Lisa's right. When the Northeast Neighborhood Study was done, there was a environmental company that designated the oldest, and all the trees really in the whole neighborhood. So I think we've done the best we can. I'm kind of looking to the future to make sure that, and I think the savanna is the place to pay the attention and put the trees in. But otherwise you're going to have three trees on a small outlot that may not, they'll be enjoyed by some, but not as many as I think that's 12 acres oak savanna that really can, I think, be quite a parcel of property in the city over a period of time.
Sure. And also the condition doesn't specify that they have to be located on that Outlaw 56 playground. They could be located in the oak savanna.
I think we did that when we did the original plat, we donated 3 oak trees for the savanna. And I'll do it again.
Other comments?
So also we could just change that then, in lieu of recognize that Phil's offered to supply 3 trees for the savanna.
Put it in the developer's agreement, whatever you'd like.
And just leave it at that.
Sure.
Sure. So the condition as it's written now, it says 4 new oak trees. That could be amended.
To just say, 3, and well.
All right, well, let's hear other comments. To me, sounds like possibly. Emily, looks like you might want to say something.
Yeah.
After that.
I had a question for staff. So with the decrease in density and the loss of mixed-use blocks, is there any concern about decrease in tax revenue, considering that it's like 45% less lots than originally planned? And then my other question was, will there be an increase in the cost of providing city services and transportation alternatives with the decrease in density as well?
You want me to speak to that more?
Sure. I think that was probably a little bit beyond staff analysis for this. I think in general, keeping in mind that with Smart Code, they established certain densities. And then also this neighborhood was designed to be more like traditional neighborhood development. So we've discussed this at a couple of the presentations recently. So traditional neighborhood versus transit-oriented development. So like the 9 Springs, the expectation is that the density is going to be there to provide transit services. I think obviously we would love to see some bus transportation in Terra Vista in the future. But if they're in line with the Smart Code parameters for development, which they are, so they're still meeting, the minimum density requirements, that they're then still meeting those goals of Smart Code, which is, transit-friendly or encouraging transit in the future, providing a mix of houses. So they are still providing mixed-use blocks. It's just maybe a different type of housing than, let's say.
So then would the mixed use be like the different types of houses versus like a business and house?
Right, yes,
Okay.
yeah. So they were always intended to be residential in this part of the neighborhood, but it's just maybe transitioning away from smaller, more dense townhomes to providing maybe more duplexes or single-family opportunities and maybe larger townhomes as well.
Okay.
And I think that I wouldn't necessarily make a decision based on tax revenue. I'd want to make sure it's a healthy, good neighborhood. And I think having the wide range of options to buy bigger houses, smaller houses, duplexes, I think that's what helps make a healthy neighborhood. And I wouldn't want to say, oh, what gets us the highest amount of money, because then you're going to end up with North Fishhatchery Road, which has all apartments. And actually, there's research that says per unit, you actually get less revenue for apartments than you do for owner-occupied stuff. So to me, what makes a good, healthy neighborhood? The tax revenue, like, that's probably a piece of it, but I wouldn't make a decision based off of that. In terms of the public transportation, I don't think it's going to make a difference on whether or not the city buses come to this area. The cost of Madison Metro is going to determine if those buses come to the area, and I can tell you that it's probably not going to happen because it's really expensive. They want a lot of money, and it's. I mean, that's kind of a separate piece to it. But
I think it's all good information though when making a decision, because it's a holistic decision and looking at every little piece.
I think that's a great point, and I think you will find the tax revenue is much more than I ever thought it was going to be in this neighborhood with the cost of housing.
Yeah.
So, and I think at some point in time, there'll be close to 3,000 people living in this neighborhood when it's all complete.
Wow.
And this type of design provides a lot more per acre than something like Tower Hill. You know, Tower Hill, those lots are pretty big. And so you're getting a lot more housing on the same amount, but it's high quality, good housing as well. And I think that's where good design comes from, is not everyone needs a half acre lot. I'd say that's a bad thing. I got one. I like it.
Yeah.
Other?
Yeah, I do have a comment. So on the parkland itself, you know, I'm looking at this map and I see two tiny little parks for 400 plus units. To me, that just seems.
But
that doesn't seem.
See, this preliminary plan.
I need to understand kind of what the plan is to offer more space for children to play. And,
Oh, absolutely. And the school is right at the upper left-hand corner for one. But Mizuna this is just the next phase. What Lisa was talking about is all the way to Larson Road.
Yeah.
There's probably 3 more phases left. There'll be more parkland dedicated as time goes on.
Yeah, I just, that is, I've heard people in Swan Creek talk about parks and they love them. And, where I live, there's tons of parks. And, when I look at this, there's not much there, right? And so just want to make sure that that's in the roadmap and it's not just going to be money given to the city and then no green space for people
There's been no fee in lieu of at all. We've dedicated plenty.
I'm not saying there was, I'm just throwing it out as a concern.
But there is a lot of area that's not, I don't think, considered parkland, but it is green space and marshland. That's where, like, Swan Creek people don't realize a lot of that parkland isn't parkland.
Oh, I know, I get it.
Yeah. But, that's right. Other comments or thoughts? I mean, I think I don't have an issue with the outlot becoming a buildable lot because of some of the other reduced densities in other areas myself. And I think it does make sense to plant the trees in the Oak Savannah. I mean, if you're going to have oaks, you should probably put them in the Oak Savannah if you have an area designated. That seems to make a lot of sense to me. So that's my 2 cents. But other comments, questions?
I guess, so are we changing the condition number 8 to say 3 instead of 4, but otherwise leaving that as is?
I think it's condition 7 would be reworded. Is that number incorrect?
On my packet, it says 8 in exchange for removal identified
Right.
special tree.
So it would be 7, condition 7 talks about the configurations of the lots. So it would read, if we were to change that requirement and allow that third buildable lot and not increase the size of that space that's to be dedicated to the public for parkland, I think we could amend the condition. So configuration of proposed outlot 56 and 57, as well as proposed lots 287 and 288, may be adjusted for staff approval prior to city signing of the plat. Reconfiguration shall result in 3 rather than 2 buildable lots on the north end of the block and 1 outlot on the south end of the block.
Okay.
And
I
then
was
in-
referring to 3 versus 4 in terms of the trees required.
Oh,
the
sorry.
trees planted, but good to also clarify in 7.
Yeah, 8, you'd also change then to 3. instead of
So then,
4.
and plant
Yeah.
3 new oak trees, because it doesn't mention exact size.
Or location.
Or location, yeah.
3-inch, I think that's what they did before.
Yeah.
Okay, so then that just becomes 3.
You ready to do the motion for it?
I move to approve the preliminary plat amendment request 2394-21 with the 10 conditions as noted by staff, with a small amendment to condition 7 and 8.
I'll second.
All right, seconded by Rich. Does everyone understand what we're voting on? Any questions? All right, all in favor say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right, that is approved. Thank you. All right, next up is Fred. Come on up and you can tell us about your rezone request.
Is this on?
It is.
Oh, I was looking for a red light.
That one's a green light on the bottom. They're all a little
Okay,
different.
thank you. Okay, so we're essentially rezoning from the SIP that was approved many, many years ago. And I'm actually going forward with something that's much less intensive a use. It's still 54 units on the overall site, but in terms of measuring intensity, I tend to lean toward bedrooms because that represents people, which usually equates to cars. So the previous project had 303 bedrooms, and the current project has, I think, 202. So we reduced it by roughly a third. Current project has 5 duplex lots and then 7 townhome buildings to kind of replicate what's immediately across the street from all these structures. And then I have incorporated some assisted living, an assisted living building that kind of replicates more of a small scale adult family home-like setup, where each one of those wings actually represents kind of the physical space of an adult family home. Each one of those wings will have a dining room, a living room, a TV room, and then 5 bedrooms. So it kind of keeps it very small, more of a residential setting, and it usually offers much higher quality of care. And then within the same building, I also have staff suites. So I'm encouraging basically less traffic to and from the assisted living, more people basically setting roots in Fitchburg with the hopes that they would, patronize the businesses here in Fitchburg and become permanent residents. That's kind of it really in a quick nutshell. I figured the staff report could probably fill in. We've been working on staff for a couple months, gone back and forth with all the questions and answers, and I think we've come up with a pretty good plan.
All right, staff report, please.
All right, so this is a PDD zoning request for a vacant lot in Swan Creek. There have been some changes from the pre-application meeting. Namely, there were originally going to be 4 separate CBRF structures with 4 units each, which have now been changed to essentially 2 connected CBRF structures with 4 units each. So this also ties to that question of CBRF licensing and the distance requirements between CBRF facilities. Per the applicant, if a CBRF facility is connected via a common space, they can be under 1 license and therefore don't need to apply for that distance exemption because they're considered a single CBRF facility. So these, it's still the CBRF facility with 4 units, CBRF facility with 4 units, and then they're going to have a sort of common element that will likely provide services to the residents, such as like a hair salon or some maybe exercise facilities, something like that. So the proposed development complies with the 54-unit max that has been applied to this parcel, and the development is proposed to be developed as 1 lot with structures under common ownership with an HOA. And the applicant provided justification for the PDD zoning in their materials, and staff have not identified any major concerns. Approval is recommended as noted in the GIP ordinance, which is on page 386 of the packet with 3 conditions. Note that there is one typo on the GIP ordinance, which states that signage will follow the standards for a residential district, but signage will actually follow the standards for multifamily residential, as that would, is more in keeping with the sort of CBRF townhome aspect of the development, but staff can fix that typo as a part of the approval. So I think, I don't know if the applicant wants to sort of describe the site plan in more detail. I know Christine is online as well.
Well, sure, if we want to just walk through the site plan from, I guess, west to east, you'd have the 5 duplex buildings on your left, kind of on the north side. Those face duplexes, which are exactly opposite Sassafras. The townhomes that front East Shadow Parkway would be a much smaller scale. They're only 5 units. The middle one is 6 units. The townhomes across the street, I believe, are 9s and 10s, if I'm not mistaken. And then we've kind of bookended the eastern end of the site with 2 more townhomes that basically are opposite the 2 large apartment buildings that are across the street of Crinkle Root. And then right where the CBRF buildings are located, that's the only portion of the site that actually has kind of physical relief. So we've kind of pushed those buildings into the hill so that when you're on Sassafras, it's only a 1-story street frontage. So it keeps it more of a residential feel.
Anything else, Lisa? All right, comments, questions from Plan Commission then? Sir, yeah, if you can fill out, you can come up and speak if you want, and then fill out a form afterwards. You can do that way if you like to come up. Want to appear?
Thank you. Apologies, I'm a new resident here. I just moved to Sassafras not more than 2 months ago, so just learning here. Are these going to be rentals, or are they for owning, or is this for assisted living?
Which buildings are you referring to?
To the townhouses and the duplexes.
Owner occupied.
Owner occupied. Yes. All right. And then has a study been done for? I know like it's kind of a wetland area as far as what will happen with water and heavy rainfall.
If you could just maybe ask all your questions or comments right away, and then we can go through them after that instead of the back.
I think those are the 2 biggest concerns.
Okay.
Knowing that it's owner occupied alleviates a lot of my other concerns.
Great. Okay. I don't think that there's any wetlands here, actually. It might be kind of wet, but it's not designated wetlands, I don't think.
No, there's no wetland. There's basically roughly the eastern half of the property is shot bedrock, which was shot years ago when the utilities went in, and then the western half is mostly clays. And the engineering for the previous SIP was basically 100% complete, and so we'll be basically just borrowing from those designs and applying it to this new site plan.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thank you.
You can fill out a form and hand it to someone up here. That'd be great. Thank you. Other questions or comments at all? I like the addition of having the owner occupied things on here, and I think it really matches well with that neighborhood. I think that's really key for me as well, is that it's really going to blend well with everything else in this neighborhood. Comments or motion? Bucks are playing right now. Sorry, just kidding. Take your time. I'm not trying to rush.
What's the score?
We're ahead.
Go ahead with motion?
Yeah, go ahead, Randy.
All right, Jay. Motion to approve public hearing and consideration of rezone request RZ-2391-21.
And I think there's some.
Is there some conditions?
Conditions, aren't there?
Do you know offhand?
Conditions, as noted in the GIP ordinance included in the packet.
Is there a number, or is that just the conditions? As the conditions as noted in the packet.
Yeah.
Perfect. There we go.
Yeah.
Perfect. All
Second.
right. Seconded by Zach. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
And opposed, nay. That's approved.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you. You said we're ahead?
We are. Not by enough. But we're ahead. All right. K, we already did. So, Ned, I believe you are next for the pre-app PDD on Lot 22 in Maple Lawn Heights. Hello, go ahead.
Hey.
What are you doing?
Ned Hoyt in Venture Capital. Mike has disappeared to watch the Bucks, which I think is only fair, given I basically abandoned him to finish the Terrace Point project. Lisa, have you got this up for us? Great. So we're here for just our pre-application kind of hearing. This site is, well, just briefly, in Venture Capital, you saw us 2 years ago when we proposed the Terrace Point project. We've invited you all back to have a look at the completed project, which can be completed on the 1st of June. We're looking to do another kind of mixed-use building of a similar sort of standard, and found a location sort of within the same sort of fish hatchery corridor that we want to pursue. So this lot 22 on Achala Drive, has been vacant for a long time, been for sale for about 8 years. It's owned by Andy Bowman and Bowman Farms. As part of the fish hatchery reconstruction, formerly Pike Drive, now Achala, has been intersection built and extended kind of halfway along with a pond created, and the rest of the land was cleared and some additional fill was added by Andy and the integrity team who's doing the reconstruction. It's primarily residential to the south and to the east, commercial to the north and west, with a little bit more industrial to the far east as you get onto the far side of Index sort of road. So it's kind of at a transition sort of there, but it's well within the kind of fish hatchery visioning area in terms of increased density and the kind of entry to Fitchburg. The site is mostly flat, but has had significant fill added so that it has a fairly steep slope down to the north at this point. Go to the next one. So the rationale for the planned sort of development district, I will admit that some of this is beyond my pay grade. When the architect tells me that to actually do what we're proposing to do, we need to ask for a planned development district. That's what we asked for. I think originally, you know, our view was because this is zoned for higher density residential, and we wanted a significant portion of commercial to be added, that we probably needed to do that on that basis. I think Lisa has pointed out that we can technically probably still do that within high-density residential, but I think the technical pieces in terms of how big the lot size is, what the setbacks are, all of those other pieces are ones that would still necessitate a planned development district to achieve the outcomes that we seek and that I think are consistent with the comprehensive plan and the visioning statement. I do know that I didn't get all this information to Lisa early enough for the staff to have actually reviewed my comments, and she'll have to disclaim having reviewed it at this point, but I think this is what the architects would tell us we need to tell you in order to have a planned development district. I'll take the next page. Economic and social, I apologize, we didn't actually update our figures from the 2018 sort of fee structure, but essentially a roughly $25 to $35 million building in line with what we've done at Terrace Point. It's going to generate another $500,000 a year or so in terms of annual property taxes and nearly $1 million worth of kind of impact fees in the process. In terms of social and other sort of impacts, again, because there is a clear view within the comprehensive plan and the fish hatchery visioning towards having an increase of sort of density and newer construction kind of in that area to uplift that corridor. We think you get a lot of general social benefits of achieving kind of those goals and objectives. Part of the reason why we've included the extra commercial here is we've looked at several other sites within the corridor, and one challenge will be that if you want to keep some of those businesses in the Fitchburg kind of area, giving them someplace to move where they can retain sort of their customers before you redevelop the buildings they're currently in is an important kind of stepping stone, as we think. So we think that having a reasonable amount of commercial in this location gives us an opportunity to progressively develop a couple of other sites as well that we're looking at and have talked to the mayor about it and have talked to Mike Zimmerman about. So our goal is to do several projects over the coming sort of years, and we think this is a stepping stone towards that, and one of the reasons for including a significant amount of commercial within this particular project. Lisa, next page. So we would certainly expect to provide a kind of a more thorough kind of review of all of the comprehensive plan and all of the visioning sort of pieces, but essentially we're looking to provide kind of compact development with a range of unit types and do it in a manner that achieves the goals of the fish hatch visioning in terms of increasing sort of density and revitalization of that area. And can certainly talk to that, but you guys have looked at all that before, and we'll provide a more thorough analysis as part of the GIP, assuming you're prepared for us to move forward on that basis. So we'll look at the plans in a minute, but generally it's a mixed-use sort of building. We had originally looked at it to have the primary frontage all the way along sort of Achala. Given the way that the fill has been placed on the site, it changes the dynamics, and so we've kind of reversed the U so that the parking would be towards Ochala, but sheltered from either Index Road or from Fitch Hatchery from a view perspective. We do plan to sort of extend sort of Ochala all the way across, which provides greater connectivity and meets some of the city's planning goals from that perspective. Again, this is an initial sort of plan, but you can see that the commercial would actually be on the fish hatchery sort of side, given that there is a stormwater basin that is constructed just to the west there. There's not a lot that actually obstructs your view from Fitch Hatch, so we believe the commercial there would actually benefit from a reasonable kind of view and signage, even though it's not directly on Fish Hatch, and that was a more optimal location than sort of on the Index side. So we've got roughly 10,000 square feet of commercial on the western side, and then an L-shaped residential structure. Anticipated to have both underground parking primarily for residential, and then sufficient commercial parking in that sort of lot plus overflow from a residential sort of perspective. If you go to the next sort of page, sort of conceptually, this is around 164, 165 units, 205 bedrooms, and provides roughly 1.2 parking per unit. That's a little bit light relative to a number of other sort of developments in some of the city standards. It's what we've done in a lot of other developments and what we're using currently at Terrace Point and has been successful there. And that doesn't include the extra street parking that would be added as part of the Ochala extension. Again, roughly 10,700 square feet of commercial, 176,000 of square feet of gross area of residential. Next page. So again, roughly sort of underneath, you end up with a fair bit of parking. We also add in sort of a range of bike parking and storage. I do know that city staff has raised some questions about the number of tandem units from a parking perspective. That is something that we will look to sort of address in more detail as part of upgraded plans. One thing we have noted with this is that partly as a result of some of the recent COVID, is that people are increasingly looking for slightly larger units because they're spending more time at home. So we would expect the unit mix here to shift from what we did at Terrace Point, even though the number of units are roughly the same, to have kind of more 1+s, more 2 bedrooms. And we find that those are probably more attractive and more suitable from a tandem perspective, but we'll look to massage the actual unit mix and the number of tandem slots to ensure that essentially we meet kind of a 1-to-1 covered parking sort of ratio to units and a 1.2 kind of overall ratio, which is in line with what we did at Terrace Point and what was approved there. We also have noted some comments about density and sort of green space. The green roof structure that we've used at Terrace Point was very successful. We're trying to figure out where we add some of that in here. That would probably shift some of the surface parking to be underground, would probably change our parking ratios as well to have less tandems and more single parks, and add some green space and amenities sort of back into the project. At the ground floor, we would keep club room, yoga, fitness, other sort of amenity, as well as the sort of the commercial. If we slide to the next slide, just the commercial is kind of a two-story sort of commercial. It's one floor, but it's a double sort of height to give it some presence. And then on the third slide, we're actually considering some form of kind of rooftop amenity above the commercial, potentially for some of the commercial to use. You could end up with a brew pub or something that might have a sort of outdoor seating in the summer above, but also to have a second club room on that level so that the residents would have a kind of a rooftop deck as well from an amenity perspective. And then the fourth is just sort of more above. And I think that's it. So again, we're just at the point of preliminary designs. We've already got some feedback. We're happy to work with city staff on that basis, but just wanted to run this by you, get any of your comments, questions, concerns, and confirm that the PDD zoning kind of application would be received and that we could proceed to the next step of a GIP application.
All right, you want to do the staff report?
Yep. All right, so the applicant is proposing PDD zoning for a mixed-use building. They provide a range of suitable uses, so 8 to 10,000 square feet of commercial, 150 to 160 units. In the proposed plans, they're showing, I think, 10,000 square feet commercial and about 163 or 4 units. They're proposing 86 surface stalls and 163 garage stalls. The future land use is high-density residential, so our interpretation is that the proposed use would comply with high-density residential land use category, even with that kind of smaller commercial component, and that PDD zoning allows a developer to propose a mix of uses that would not typically be found in an existing zoning district, so that provides them that flexibility of having a mixed-use building in the high-density residential land use category. The applicant provided just some justification in their original PDD materials. We did receive these updated materials today, and I think they go in a little bit more in depth about exactly why PDD zoning won't work, but haven't reviewed that in detail. So there are 2 key points that we mentioned in the staff memo as well that we just want to mention at the meeting, that at this time, stormwater is not handled on site, or I think they show some bio retention facilities, but as you can see on the site plan, there's some stormwater facilities shown on city property. I think there needs to be more discussions with city staff about how stormwater is going to be handled for the development itself. So there was a stormwater facility constructed as a part of the Ochala Drive extension and the Fish Hatchery Road reconstruction projects that was designed to take on that stormwater, increased stormwater from the right-of-way. I think there's been some comments about potential land exchange in order to accommodate stormwater facilities on this end of the property. I think that needs to be discussed further with staff as well as maybe some policymakers as to the feasibility of that approach. So that's the biggest thing, is just understanding how stormwater is going to be accommodated for the development. And then as well, planning staff's opinion is that the density and intensity of development on the site is too high. Some things to think about here is that the initial parking ratios are lower than similar products. So, when the parking ratios are rounded, they're both around 1.2, but this is still less. So this is like 1.19. Terrace Point is like 1.27. We're getting into decimals here, but I think one of the things too, which Ned mentioned, is their use of tandem parking. So Terrace Point does also utilize tandem parking. So that's when the 2 spaces are in one line. So potentially, let's say like 2 roommates, they can figure out a schedule that works where one person's parked in for a part of the day, and that provides flexibility and allows them to provide more parking in a smaller space. The proportion of tandem parking for Terrace Point is higher than, for Ochala, for this development, is higher than what's proposed in Terrace Point. So I think the expectation is to get a little bit more data and understanding of the relationship between the number of bedrooms in a unit to the use of tandem parking. Because I think right now, and I think they're going to modify potentially the bedroom mix, but right now there's more like 1-bedroom units than 2 to 3. So do 2 people renting a 1-bedroom unit then come to some agreement to use tandem parking? So these are the kinds of things that we just want to get a better handle on, since the parking ratio is pretty low, and with structured parking, we typically want to see a 1-to-1 ratio for the number of units. So if they have 163 units, we want to see 163 covered parking spaces. And then similarly, setbacks are small, so they're looking at maybe setbacks you would typically see in like smart code, so 7 feet setback, 5 to 10 feet setback, where standard setbacks would be like 25, 30. But again, that's part of the PDD zoning, is that you're creating standardized zoning parameters. We also discussed the stormwater facilities on site. There are concerns about turning movements within the parking lot because they appear to be very tight, and then as well as just a kind of lack of open space. So, is a rooftop space suitable for apartments? They're showing some open space in the middle of a parking lot. Is that providing a functional space for people to have a place to be outside of their apartment? So these are just kind of general high-level comments about the intensity of the development, but PDD zoning does allow them to propose their own sort of development standards.
All right, thank you. I don't have any public comments. Well, Mike Thorson also registered in support, but he's watching the Bucks, so he didn't want to speak, apparently. He'd rather watch the Bucks. I don't blame him. But comments, questions from Planning Commission? Steven looks like maybe.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of where I want to start. I think with the tandem parking was obviously a concern called out by staff. Looking at your mix of 1 and 2 units, that certainly does seem that there would be a better or more of a driver for more 2 units than it seems very 1-bedroom heavy, and just trying to think of how does the market actually drive that?
Yeah, this is, again, an initial concept sort of plan, and our feedback that we've already given to the architects is that it needs to shift more towards 1+2s or 2+s. And then we're in the process of doing that. We did not get updated plans done that actually worked, that we could actually sort of submit in advance of the this hearing from those. We just would have added more questions. We're working through those questions, but have not got something yet to circulate.
I think more directly to the point of should this be PDD, so what I'm understanding is if we were to take off the western edge of the building, which is commercial, we wouldn't need any kind of new approval, right? This is high-density residential in a high-density residential area?
So I think the updated document they provided provides a little bit more input. So we have our RH zoning district, so high-density zoning district, which requires a certain amount of lot area per unit. So again, we haven't reviewed this in detail, but so for an efficiency unit, it requires 2,000 square feet, and it increases with the number of bedroom units. So per the calculations provided here, in order to have the bedroom mix that they have and providing 165 units, they would need a 7-acre site to rezone to our RH zoning district. Another thing as well is that any new RH zoning district, like a newly created one, I think after 2010, can't exceed 90,000 square feet. So if they need to submit a CSM, let's say to dedicate Ochala Drive, they're then creating a new lot, and it's likely going to exceed that 90,000 square feet.
Okay.
So
it's not just because of I thought it was like the commercial
no,
residential
I
mix,
think
but
that does, the PDD zoning does provide them. So like in the RH zoning district, you can't have commercial space. Sure. So that PDD zoning does provide the flexibility for that as well.
Yeah, and then there's some technical boundary and other CSM issues. Yeah.
The last thing that I have then is really looking at where that would be placed. Do you have any idea for commercial? And I remember asking you guys this when we were looking at Terrace Point of, what are you going to do with those 2 end units there? Any ideas here just because you're not on Fish Hatchery Road?
Look, I think my ideal is probably, half of it's a brew pub that can use the kind of the roof deck, and then the other half is probably office space of some form.
Okay. It's a little bit, different than the traditional commercial on the first floor, residential 2 through 4 or whatever, and was just kind of curious if you had ideas for that.
Yeah, I suspect larger tenants rather than sort of a range of smaller ones. True. If you're actually on a street frontage, just at the ground level, it's easier to have, your 1,000 square feet or your 1,500 square feet small sort of retail. I suspect these are larger users.
Okay. Thanks.
I guess I just had a few thoughts, and I think one is looking at it, it just seems like we're trying to fit 10 pounds of stuff in a 5-pound bag. There's a lot crammed into this. I'm concerned about stuff like stormwater. I mean, that's obviously a huge thing. There's already stormwater issues in this area, so that obviously that needs to be addressed, which you're aware of. I think staff talked about the double lots. It seems like an awful lot to me. I think that's probably too many, and the mix will help that maybe a little bit. I'm also really concerned about just the lack of green space. There's no recreational areas. There's no parks in this area. And so people who live here, essentially whatever you have is going to be what they have for recreation areas. And you talk about maybe adding something kind of rooftop, but there's nothing right now. And I don't know what the impervious surface is, but it's really high on this lot, what the impervious surface is. So to me, it just seems like it's trying to, I understand why, and this is early, but it just seems like there's a little too much on this lot. So anyway.
Yeah, I would agree with that completely. Those were my concerns, just what staff said and what you said, so.
Other questions or thoughts at all? No, if nothing else, we can move on. I don't want to cut anyone off. Any further questions? Go ahead. Yeah.
Just gonna note, this doesn't require an action, just general comment.
Yeah. Any further questions for you, Ned?
No, I've got plenty of stuff to address between now and the GIP submittal, so.
All right. All right. Then I guess if there's nothing else, we'll move on. Thank you for waiting.
Thank you all. Cheers.
All right. Moving on to M, I believe we are probably postponing this, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yep, so the applicant is still working on some of the same things we discussed, I think, 2
Sorry to
meetings
cut
ago.
you off, but is there a motion to table?
Yes. Move to table CDP 2379-21 to a
that's sorry.
definitive date of August 17th.
Second.
All in favor of tabling, say
Aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, nay. All right, that's tabled. Sorry. All right, and I think Wade is online to talk about this ordinance. Hey, Wade.
Hey, Plan Commission, can you hear me okay?
We can.
Just so folks know, it's halftime, and I think the Bucks are down 3, so.
Only halftime, you got plenty of time.
If I share my screen?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, stop sharing probably.
Hopefully folks can see my screen. So basically, we're here tonight to kind of talk about potential recommendation of approval of the ag zoning modification that we've been discussing for a few months now. The commission did see these modifications in concept a few months back as a discussion item. So again, tonight, the idea would be to make a recommendation of approval in some form. So 99% of what you're seeing tonight in the packet reflects what you saw months ago. There is one change that staff is proposing based on comments from other relevant departments as we went through the review process. And that is related to this idea of a rural event venue as it relates to new buildings only. So as the draft policy was construed, basically you could develop a rural event venue with an existing farm building, an ag building. You could rehab that building, and that could serve solely as a rural event venue. So that's option one for a rural event venue. Nothing's changing in that regard. But a second option would be to build a new building. And as we initially discussed the policy, that new building could serve as a rural event venue only if it also had a quote unquote agricultural use. We didn't define what the agricultural use meant. So because of that, we got some feedback from departments. So I'm going to talk about that. But what we're talking about now, again, is rural event venues that are new buildings only, not existing rehabbed farm buildings. So basically, the fire department and building inspection had some real legitimate concerns about public safety in a quote unquote agricultural building that also would house large public gatherings, i.e. a rural event venue. So some examples would be this idea of really unique fire hazards as you would see in a traditional ag building. So think about things like hay storage, large equipment fuel storage in the same building that's also hosting these large public gatherings. So again, some real issues there. The second issue would have been an administrative interpretation issue from a staff perspective. So the idea of this ag building, leaving it broadly defined for quote unquote, general agricultural uses, that left a lot of ambiguity and gray area in how we would interpret what an agricultural use is. As an example, storage of a tractor, could that potentially constitute an agricultural use of that building? So again, two big issues with a new building housing a rural event venue and also serving as an agricultural building. Public safety concerns and also issues in potential administration of the ordinance. So as a result of those two issues, staff did propose a solution, a fix, and that is to essentially create parameters for quote unquote ag use of that new building that would also be a rural event venue. So basically that required three tweaks, which I'll talk about. The first tweak, and this again is all contained in your packet memo. The first tweak was removal of the wording agricultural building from the definition of rural event venue. The second tweak was the addition of the word education to our definition of, agricultural entertainment. And the third piece of the puzzle that was kind of reliant on those first two pieces of the puzzle was the identification of very specific ag uses that would be allowed and essentially required, one or the other, in a new building housing a rural event venue. And those ag uses would be defined as ag entertainment per the definition, as you've seen before with the addition of that education phrasing. And then the second potential ag use of that rural event venue building would be ag retail. So the idea of if you grow and process raw or finished ag commodities on site, you could sell those in a rural event venue building, and that would qualify that building as having an agricultural use. So again, this is just some minor tweaks from the changes you saw months ago. I do want to point out, in staff's opinion, these changes do kind of follow precedent in terms of what we've seen in the city historically with some other similar land uses. So again, this is what staff is proposing. I do want to point out the Ag Committee who met before you today did pass or make a recommendation of approval as presented by staff. So that's, I guess, something to consider as well. But with that, I can certainly answer any questions or take any comments the commission might have.
Lisa, do you have any additional?
Oh, no, I defer to Wade on the amendment.
All right. Randy, do you want to speak any more about ag and rural affairs discussion and give us any more input on that?
No, I don't believe so. No, thank you.
All right. I do have two people who have registered. Let's see. First, I have Sean Path from Fitchburg registering in support and with a comment. It's a great addition to our city. And then also Jeffrey Schleicher from Verona registering in support with the comments. I support adopting ordinance 2021-012 as proposed by the Fitchburg Planning and Zoning Department. I believe a rural event venue for weddings and corporate events can be a tremendous asset to the community with positive impacts on ag tourism and economic development in the city. New construction can provide the most attractive, safe, and accessible option. The ordinance, as written, ensures this would still be done in the context of farm-based activity. All right. So that's what I have. So I can open up to questions, comments. And I guess I'll just ask one quick question, Wade. When you talk about ag retail and that's grown or processed on site, and maybe this isn't a problem, but could something like a brew pub, for example, open up in rural? And if they're brewing their beer there, then they could have a brew pub essentially?
Yeah, growing hops.
Yeah, they might grow hops out back as well. So I don't know if that's a bad thing or not, but I'm just thinking like someone could put a brew pub in the middle of the the country, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some liquor elements there, alcohol elements that might prohibit something like that. Lisa, do you have anything to add on that, or?
I was just gonna pull up the ordinance, the red line one that was included in the packet.
I actually had a question that ties into that. It was about alcohol. It's point M in the ordinance, and it says additionally, no money may exchange hands for events including but not limited to entrance fees, donations, raffle, food or plate charge to the portion of the license not required. And that seems to me that would then like preclude like a fundraiser coming in, for example, and I think that would really limit their business. Like if, United Way, I'm making it up, wants to come in and like charge like $100 and they want to serve alcohol at that event, that could be kind of nice for them to be able to do that.
And to piggyback on that, what if they wanted to have an admission fee for that? Or what if,
Exactly.
education classes, and you want to charge $20 to come to the educational class on beekeeping or something like that.
Mhm.
It almost,
And
the
they
way
have
you
meat.
read that makes
Yeah.
you think you can't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think those elements were proposed by the clerk's department, but we can, certainly clarify some of those requirements. And I thought that was specifically related to serving of alcohol and not other things, but.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like point M is all on alcohol. I know in a lot of other cities, they have it where it's not direct sales, but if it's like you buy a ticket or if it's a donation or something, that's how they get around it.
Right. Lisa, do you mind throwing up the, that part of the packet with some of that language in it?
So M.
Yeah. And Aaron, I guess to your broader point, certainly we're not permitting, restaurant type facilities, again, I'm not a zoning administrator, but I mean, I think those, you talk about brew pubs and those sorts of things, that gets into, food service, alcohol service. We're not, I don't think we're going down that path with this idea of specific ag retail. To me, that's more along the lines of, as an example, if apple orchard, maybe you're selling the apples on site, things along those lines.
Yeah, so I think the definition, agricultural products processing facilities. Oh, here it is. So retail establishments, not including roadside stands, for the sale of raw, processed, or value-added agricultural products produced primarily from the farm operation on site. And I guess just, for example, some of the, what's the brew pub that recently opened here? So that's considered a restaurant and a drinking place and are listed specifically as uses in our other zoning district. So I think technically you might be getting into more of the interpretation of if someone sees retail, are they gonna come to the city and say, will you allow retail so I can open a brewery? The interpretation would probably be that, and again, I'm not the zoning administrator, so Sonia, would maybe describe this differently, but that if we specifically identify a drinking place in a restaurant as a use in our other zoning districts, and that's not listed in the agricultural zoning district as being permitted, then that would preclude that kind of use from proceeding. I think there might be opportunities to clarify, but that might be one way you could interpret the zoning code.
So if it's not listed that you can do it, you can't? It has to be
Yeah,
listed
so that's
as what you
generally
can
like
do.
if it's omitted, it's not permitted kind of a thing. But we also, I just looked at our zoning code, we don't define retail specifically, let's say like in our definitions, but I think there's a difference generally between retail and restaurant or bar or things like that.
I don't love the idea of anything that's left up to interpretation. In just 2.5 years of serving on this body, we've had enough things where it's like, well, the person at the time interpreted it that way. I don't like that, so it'd be nice if we could have that clarified. I think Emily brought up really, really sharp points there.
Randy, looks like you want to speak.
Well, I'm kind of curious, so where does this go then? For instance, does it move it back to ag and rural or onto zoning? I'm just curious the process then.
We could ask for more clarification over the next month and for it to come back. I might suggest that maybe it comes back to Ag and Rural Affairs just with those questions that maybe they didn't think about if they want to discuss it. They don't have to, but.
Yeah, no, it was something that I do not recall ever coming up, unless it was something prior to my time. I mean, this has been going on this conversation has been out there for some time, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think
Can I just interject, what would be the desired clarification?
So I think the clarification is one on what retail establishments are or aren't, and then also I think on something like a charity event or something like that. How do you get around some of those requirements? If they want to do a fundraiser or something like that. They might be doing a fundraiser for the splash pad or for the hub or something else. I mean, there's lots of things that might be city related and people love that. Right as it is right now, you could interpret it as you can't do it. So.
And I guess for retail, you're looking for kind of a bullet list of what is a raw processed or value-added egg product? Would that be the gist of it?
I think it's what's considered a retail establishment. Is it, is it brew pub? Is it, I think there's just some concern about what's a retail establishment and what isn't. And maybe it's not understanding that article, and maybe it's saying that you can't add those conditional uses. I guess there's some confusion on what exactly this article is saying. Is what it seems like to me. Again, I think the overall idea people are on board with, but just concerned about things being left up to interpretation by staff, and then someone wanting to do something instead of saying no, that's not retail, and saying yes, it is, and then not wanting to put staff in that predicament either. I think that's the other concern too, and people get very creative when they see some of these things on here that can be interpreted many different ways.
Sure.
I guess I don't hear anyone saying that the overall idea is a problem. It's just not wanting staff to put it in a weird spot.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
It's an event venue, so it's not, that's what we're dealing with more than businesses, I assume. If we look at businesses, we look at like cheese places down in Monroe where they've got the farm, you just pull up and buy your cheese in a little booth, or like Sassy Cow up by Columbus where they've got their own ice cream. I don't see those as event venues though. I see those as just downright a real business. That's based. For an event venue, I would think of it as something that's not on a regular basis, but specific events or weekends or weddings or things like that. I don't know, Wade, do you have a?
Yeah, and just to clarify, the retail element is basically an allowance for any farmer. That's, again, something we were proposing to be allowed on a farm in the city's rural areas. As it relates to rural event venue, the issue is how do we make a new building that houses a rural event venue somehow related to agriculture, the building itself. And as I stated, just saying agriculture, hay storage, equipment storage, that's not going to fly, with that, or our fire inspection, building inspection people don't like that idea. So the idea would be, how do we make a new building that houses a rural event venue, have that building have a literal connection to agriculture? And the way staff, because that's kind of the direction the Ag Committee gave us. So the way staff is proposing to do that is to say, yeah, you can have a new building housing a rural event venue, but you must either do ag entertainment in there as well or ag retail. And that's the literal connection of that new building to agriculture. Now, I do want to also point out that that's the building itself. We're also requiring the broader land around it, around the rural event venue, to be in agricultural use. So there's a land use component to this, and there's a building use component to this. And the attempt is to tie both the building and the land to agriculture. So that's the intent of, kind of the changes that you're seeing before you.
So I guess what if someone sells eggs from their chickens in a closet on the corner of the event venue? I mean, is that a way to kind of essentially circumvent the regulations? And at that point, is it even worth having it in there?
Well, again, that egg requirement would be part of the conditional use permit application. And, just like we make requirements for urban land uses that they be upheld as stated in the application, we would, do the same thing with this type of an application. So there would be an interpretation of the application and making sure it has a legitimate ag entertainment or ag retail use, and then would be approved or not approved accordingly. But I guess I would offer this is much more specific and detailed than our previous iteration of just saying an agricultural building, which I think that, to me, Aaron, that premise is a slippery slope that you just talked about, meaning, is storage of a tractor, does that make it an agricultural building?
Yep.
A rake in the closet, yeah, exactly, so.
Yeah, my garage is an agricultural building.
Right.
I am,
Again, I would point out previous examples of precedent in the city. Again, these were existing buildings that were rehabbed. But if you look at the McKenzie barn, we basically consider that an egg building because it has egg classes and egg entertainment. And then there's the Apple Garden barn, which I haven't been out there in years, but my understanding is traditionally they sold egg commodities produced on site at that facility. So again, I think those are good examples of a precedent of, and staff is trying to kind of stay true to those types of land uses.
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the entire thing, but is there a mechanism for someone to essentially appeal? Like if staff says, no, this doesn't work, can they bring it to like Plan Commission to appeal that?
Plan Commission would consider the conditional use permit. So if Plan Commission were to deny a conditional use permit, or is that what you mean? Or?
Okay, I
Or if
guess,
we would like-
yeah, I guess if the conditional use permit is coming here, then we approve it or deny it here at this level, not at staff level. I'm just wondering if staff says, no, that doesn't work, but if it's a conditional use permit, I guess it would come here anyway.
And I'll just throw out another idea, what one thought the Ag Committee had today was to get rid of allowance of new buildings for rural event venues. So the idea would be you can only create a rural event venue if you're rehabbing an existing structure. That was discussed as well. Ultimately, they like the idea of allowing a new building with the ag elements that we've been discussing.
yeah, I think the new building needs to be in there. I'm impressed, or I like the fact that the structure has to meet fire code standards for public assembly. The thing I would be worried about most is public safety, fires, tornadoes, whatever. And I think what we have here is good. I like what I see, and I think it covers that, and I think it's open enough. And contrary to Steve, sometimes I like vague because it allows you to expand an idea later on for something that might be new. So, and I think this is doing a good job here.
We update our ordinances all the time, so as we find problems with this ordinance, that it very well might come back with changes needed as well. I mean, that's something that we do is update our ordinances.
Is there still any concern about the money exchanging hands piece, though, from a?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I still have the same concern that Emily
Maybe
raised.
that's something that we need to readdress and then go from there.
Yeah, so I think if we want to ask for it to come back with that money changing hands piece clarified. We can do that as well.
So I think though, and again, Wade, you might be more familiar with this. So that item M states that the sale and consumption of alcohol beverages on the premises are subject to the city's licensing requirements. And then it just says that a license is not required. Because I think even if they were, so like if they wanted to sell a ticket to raise money and say it's $20 to come in and then you get alcohol, I think they would still apply for an alcohol license in that case. Because that's where the exchange of money is coming in. So again, I'm not the city clerk, but.
Are they definitely doing that? Because I know in a lot of cities, like they'll let places like this kind of get around that problem of, by being able to bring it in. And so long as they're not directly selling it, but like, for example, like at a wedding, people could, bring in the booze, they can give it out, but there's no money exchanging hands. And then they'll often get around it with like, you can do a donation, or so long as it's not like a direct sale, you can get around it that way.
Yeah, I guess I would have to defer to the clerk.
Yeah.
Well, and I guess, Wade, maybe a question is, what is the point of that entire last sentence in M?
And that was direct translation from a literal incorporation of text from the clerk.
Okay.
So they, and I didn't ask for a detailed clarification. We can certainly talk with them and clarify what that means and address the commission's concerns and bring it back. Sure.
Great.
And I think ultimately what I'm hearing is that we love everything about it. Just want to make sure this piece is kind of buttoned up.
I think we should probably remove all doubt, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
You just a thought, I think the clerks will have much more say on this than the Ag Committee. I mean, do you want it to go back to the Ag Committee, or do you want staff to, you want to recommend this with direction to staff to clarify, with the clerk, or how do you, how do you want to handle that?
I don't know that Ag needs to necessarily approve it again. I think Randy or yourself can probably just give them an update and say, hey, this is one area that Plan Commission just wanted to make sure that it was clarified.
I would agree, yeah. So really the interpretation then would be from the clerk.
Yeah, it's really getting clerks
Sure.
to weigh in on what we need to do, yeah. So I think we would, I guess, move to postpone until next month.
I move to postpone ordinance 2021-0-12 until a definitive date of next August 17th, 2021.
Second.
Second by Randy. And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. All right. Did you have a last question, Wade? Sorry.
Just to clarify, so we'll bring it back to this body next
Yeah.
month, is that right?
Yes,
Okay.
correct. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks for hanging out with us.
Sure, no problem, thanks.
All right.
All right, so this next item was related to approval of ordinance 2021-0-12, so I think it could also be tabled.
All right. Someone want to move to table it?
I move to table the approval of a conditional use permit form rural event venues to August 17th, 2021.
Second.
Sent by Emily. All in favor of postponing, say aye.
Aye. Aye. Are those tabled or postponed?
Table, I guess. He said tabled. It doesn't really matter.
I'm just
Table.
We're having a sidebar
preparing
over
for my
here.
report
Yeah.
out next week, you know?
Yeah. A table, you can't discuss it. A postponement, you can.
See?
Right.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. All right, that's postponed. Report from the department?
None.
Nothing? No, any announcements?
Next meeting will be August 17th at 6:30 PM.
All right, and go Bucks. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
So, Randy, all in favor of adjourning, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Nay. All right, we're adjourned.